Story 1.
We can't afford gifts for everyone, my in-laws announced every Christmas. Yet somehow they managed elaborate presents for their other grandkids. I never complained. Then I launched my business and showed up in a new car. Can you help us with some bills? My answer. I'm going to tell you something that sounds petty. I know how it's going to sound before I even start, but I need you to hear the whole thing before you judge me, because there are layers to this that didn't make sense even to me until I was standing in my in-laws' kitchen, staring at two people I tried so hard to please for nearly a decade, and I realized I was done. Completely done. For 8 years, 8 full years, I watched my in-laws shower my sister-in-law's kids with Christmas presents while my daughter got drugstore candles and dollar store trinkets. For 8 years, I smiled and said thank you so much and told myself it didn't matter, that material things weren't important, that Emma was too young to notice anyway. For 8 years, I kept my mouth shut because that's what you do when you marry into a family, right? You adapt. You accommodate. You swallow your pride and pretend not to notice when the love gets distributed unevenly. But here's the thing about pretending, it has an expiration date. And mine came due last December, right there in that kitchen, when two people who'd barely acknowledged my daughter's existence for 7 years had the absolute nerve to ask me for money. What happened next split my husband's family down the middle. Half of them aren't speaking to me. The other half are sending me private messages apologizing for not speaking up sooner. My sister-in-law called me cruel. My husband's cousin called me a hero. And me? I'm sleeping just fine at night, which apparently makes me the villain in this story. So let me take you back to the beginning, and you can decide for yourself who's really in the wrong here. I met David when I was 26, working as a paralegal at a mid-sized firm downtown. The kind of job where you do 3 people's work for one person's salary and call yourself lucky to have it. David was opposing counsel on a case, nothing dramatic, just a contract dispute that settled before trial, but I noticed him immediately. Not because he was particularly handsome, though he was, in that quiet way some men have. But because he was kind. Genuinely kind. The type who held doors without making a production of it, who remembered your coffee order after hearing it once, who actually listened when you talked about your day instead of waiting for his turn to speak. We dated for 2 years before he proposed, and they were good years. Easy years. He met my parents, I met his, and everything seemed normal enough. His parents, Linda and George, were polite at family dinners. They asked appropriate questions about my job and commented on the weather and complimented the wine I brought. Not warm, exactly, but not hostile either. Just present. Like extras in a movie who had 3 lines and delivered them adequately. They're just like that, David explained after our first dinner at their house, when I mentioned how formal everything had felt. They're not huggers or anything. They take time to warm up to people. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. David was their son, after all. He knew them better than I did. We got married in a small ceremony at a bed and breakfast upstate. 30 people, string lights, a cake from a local bakery that was almost too pretty to cut. Linda and George attended with what I can only describe as polite tolerance. They sat in the front row, smiled for photos, made the expected toasts. But there was something missing, some warmth, some genuine joy, that I couldn't quite name at the time. They were going through the motions, like actors who'd memorized their blocking but forgot to connect with the character. They seemed happy, I said to David on our wedding night, testing the waters. They were, he said immediately. But his voice had that careful quality it got when he was smoothing things over, and I let it drop because it was our wedding night, and I didn't want to start our marriage by picking apart his family dynamics. Our daughter Emma was born 11 months later, 1 week early and screaming her way into the world with a full head of dark hair and my nose. I thought, naively, hopefully, that a grandchild would bridge whatever gap existed between me and Linda and George. Babies do that, right? They soften people. They create common ground where none existed before. Linda and George came to the hospital the day after Emma was born. They brought a card with a generic message, "Congratulations on your new arrival." And a stuffed elephant from the hospital gift shop. I know it was from the gift shop because it still had a price sticker on its foot. Linda held Emma for maybe 3 minutes. She looked down at her with this distant expression, like she was examining something mildly interesting at a museum, then handed her back to me. "She's lovely," she said, in exactly the same tone you'd use to compliment a stranger's landscaping. George took a photo with his phone, patted David on the shoulder, and they left 20 minutes later because Linda had a hair appointment. "They'll warm up once she's older," David said when I mentioned how brief the visit had been. "Newborns make some people nervous." I wanted to believe that too. David's sister, Michelle, had 2 kids already, Brandon, who was 5, and Olivia, who was 3. They lived 10 minutes from Linda and George in a subdivision where all the houses looked vaguely the same: beige siding, 2-car garages, basketball hoops in driveways. We lived 40 minutes away in a smaller town with lower rent and better schools. Not far, but far enough that spontaneous visits required planning. Michelle's kids called Linda and George Mimi and Pop. They stayed over every weekend. They had special pancakes on Sunday mornings and elaborate birthday parties at trampoline parks and bowling alleys, funded with checks that David said were just what they do for grandkids. When Emma turned 1, we drove to Michelle's house for a joint birthday party. Michelle always hosted because her house was bigger and because Linda and George were already there most weekends anyway. The party was in the backyard. Brandon and Olivia's half of the celebration featured a bounce house shaped like a castle, a magician who pulled rabbits from hats and made balloon animals, and a dessert table that looked like something from Pinterest: tiered cupcakes, a candy bar with color-coordinated wrappers, sugar cookies decorated with edible glitter. Emma's half of the celebration was a sheet cake from the grocery store with "Happy First Birthday" written in blue icing that was already starting to melt in the June heat. Linda handed me a card as we were leaving. Inside was a $20 bill and a note, for Emma's future. "She won't even remember this," Linda said, watching me read it. "No point going overboard for a 1-year-old. She wasn't wrong, technically. Emma wouldn't remember. But I would. I'd remember standing there with my daughter on my hip, watching a magician perform for 2 children who shrieked with delight while my own daughter gnawed on her fist and drooled on my shoulder, oblivious to the fact that she was celebrating her birthday at someone else's party. "That was really generous," I said, because what else could I say? "Thank you so much." David's hand found mine in the car on the drive home. He squeezed once, hard, and I squeezed back. Neither of us said anything. What was there to say? The first Christmas was when the pattern really revealed itself in full, undeniable color. We gathered at Linda and George's house, which was the tradition. The house was a sprawling ranch they'd bought back when George was still working as a civil engineer and money was easier. The living room had vaulted ceilings and a stone fireplace that George always insisted on lighting even though the house had central heat. The tree was enormous, professionally decorated with matching gold and burgundy ornaments and an expensive ribbon that waterfalls down in perfect loops. Beneath it sat a mountain of presents, all wrapped in coordinated paper with elaborate bows that had probably cost more than the gifts I'd wrapped in recycled newspaper and twine. Michelle's kids tore into their presents with a single-minded frenzy of children who'd been promised the world and were now receiving it. Brandon unwrapped a gaming console, a bicycle with training wheels he didn't need anymore, 3 massive Lego sets, and enough clothes to outfit a small classroom. Olivia got an American Girl doll with a full wardrobe and accessories, a wooden dollhouse that George had apparently assembled in the garage over 3 weekends, and a tablet loaded with educational games. Emma, who was 18 months old and had just learned to walk, got a board book with half the pages already bent and a teething ring still in its package. "We're on a fixed income now that George is retired," Linda announced over dinner, her voice carrying that apologetic but firm tone of someone who'd rehearsed the line in front of a mirror. "We just can't afford to go overboard for everyone like we used to." She said this while serving a prime rib roast that must have cost $200, alongside roasted vegetables and a dessert spread that included 3 different pies. David's knee pressed against mine under the table. I pressed back. We developed this silent language over the years, small touches that meant I see it too or let it go or we'll talk about this later. "That's completely reasonable," I said, smiling at Linda. "We understand. Fixed income is tough." What I didn't say: your daughter's kids just unwrapped $1,500 worth of gifts, but sure, fixed income, that makes perfect sense. What I didn't say: my daughter is playing with a wrapping paper because it's more interesting than anything you gave her. What I didn't say: this hurts. It hurts in a way I don't know how to name yet, but it's settling in my chest like a stone, and I don't think it's ever going away. This continued every year. Every Christmas. Every birthday. Every random Tuesday when Linda decided to drop off a little something for Brandon and Olivia, usually toys or clothes or tickets to the zoo or theater, while Emma got nothing. Not even a phone call. Year 2, Emma got a stuffed animal that squeaked. Brandon got a drone. Olivia got a karaoke machine. Year 3, Emma got a coloring book. Brandon got a gaming chair. Olivia got an iPad. Year 4, Emma got a pack of generic crayons. Brandon got a season pass to an amusement park. Olivia got American Girl accessories worth more than my monthly grocery budget. I started documenting it without really meaning to. Not in a spreadsheet or anything formal like that, but in my head, I kept a running tally. The numbers didn't lie. Brandon and Olivia were averaging $700 to $800 per kid per Christmas. Emma was averaging $25. I brought it up to David in year 3, carefully, after Emma was asleep. Have you noticed your parents treat Emma differently? He frowned, genuinely confused in that way men sometimes are when they don't want to see what's right in front of them. What do you mean? The gifts. The attention. The visits. Michelle's kids get everything, and Emma gets, they're older, he interrupted gently, reasonably. They cost more because they're into more expensive hobbies. Emma's still little. She doesn't need much yet. It was a logical explanation. I almost believed it. Almost. But then Emma turned 4 and Brandon turned 8, and at Christmas that year Brandon unwrapped a $1,000 gaming laptop while Emma unwrapped a pack of crayons. Not even the good kind, the generic waxy ones that don't color properly and break if you press too hard. Maybe they don't know what to get her, David tried when I brought it up again, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. The explanation was wearing thin even for him. Then why don't they ask? I said quietly, carefully. They see Michelle twice a week. They know exactly what her kids want because they're involved in their lives. They know Brandon wants to be a programmer and Olivia loves horses. Do they know anything about Emma? David opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. They've been busy. With Michelle's kids. They're busy with them. But they can't spare 2 hours a month for their other granddaughter? He didn't have an answer for that. But he also didn't confront his parents, and I didn't push him to. What would that conversation even look like? Hi Mom and Dad, can you love my daughter more? Some things you can't force. By year 5, I'd stopped expecting anything different. I told myself it didn't matter. That material things weren't important. That Emma was too young to notice the disparity anyway. That love wasn't measured in dollars. Except Emma wasn't too young anymore. She was 6 when she finally asked the question I'd been dreading. We were driving home from Christmas dinner. It was dark, snow starting to fall in lazy spirals through the headlight beams. Emma was in the backseat in her booster, staring out the window, clutching the single present she'd received, a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. I know they were missing because I'd watched her dump it out on Linda's living room floor while Brandon set up his new virtual reality headset. The puzzle was clearly regifted, probably from a white elephant exchange or something Linda had won at a church raffle and stuck in a closet until she needed a token gift. Mommy, Emma said, her voice small and uncertain, did I do something bad? My throat closed up. I felt David's hand move toward mine, but I couldn't take my eyes off the rearview mirror, where I could see Emma's reflection. This small, perfect person who'd done nothing wrong except be born to the wrong branch of the family tree. No, sweetheart, I managed. Why would you ask that? Because Mimi gave Olivia a real puppy for Christmas. A actual real puppy. And I got this. She held up the puzzle, shaking it slightly. Some of the pieces rattled loose. Do they not like me? David's hands tightened on the steering wheel so hard I heard his knuckles crack. His jaw was working, grinding through options, trying to find words that wouldn't shatter our 6-year-old daughter or damn his parents. They love you, he said finally, but even he didn't sound convinced. The words came out flat and hollow. Emma nodded slowly, like she was trying to believe him but couldn't quite manage it. Okay. She didn't bring it up again. She just accepted it as truth. Some kids got puppies and VR headsets and trips to Disneyland. Some kids got broken puzzles. She was in column B. I looked out my window so she wouldn't see my face in the mirror. The snow was falling harder now, gathering on the sides of the road in uneven drifts. I watched it blur past and thought about all the things I wanted to say but couldn't. Not yet. Not in front of Emma. But the stone in my chest had grown. It was heavier now. Sharper. Year 6 and 7 were more of the same. The disparity didn't shrink, if anything, it grew. Brandon got a trip to space camp. Olivia got horseback riding lessons and competition fees. Emma got socks. Literally socks. Christmas of year 7, she unwrapped 3 pairs of socks with cartoon characters on them, the kind you buy in a 6-pack at discount stores. Emma didn't complain. She'd learned not to. She just smiled and said thank you in this automatic way that broke something in me every time I heard it. She stopped asking to call Mimi and Pop. She stopped getting excited when we told her we were visiting them. Once, when David suggested we drive over for Sunday dinner, Emma asked if she could stay home with a babysitter instead. Why, honey? David asked, trying to sound casual even though I could see the hurt in his eyes. I just don't feel like it, Emma said. She was 7. She was old enough to know that honesty would hurt her father's feelings, so she'd learned to be vague instead. I watched my daughter learn to expect nothing from her grandparents, and it hollowed something out in my chest that I don't think will ever fill back in properly. David started declining invitations to family events. "I'm tired," he'd say to Linda when she called, or "Emma has a project due," or "we're fighting something, might be contagious." The excuses piled up. Linda would sound hurt on the phone, this wounded tone like she couldn't understand why we were pulling away, but never curious enough to ask what was actually wrong. Never curious enough to wonder if maybe, possibly, she'd done something to cause it. Then came year 8. The year everything changed. I'd been working on a business idea for 3 years by then, freelance consulting for small law firms that needed paralegal support but couldn't afford full-time staff. I'd been doing it on the side, nights and weekends, slowly building a client base while working my day job at the firm. It was exhausting, but I was good at it. I knew litigation support inside and out, and I had a reputation for being fast, thorough, and reliable. David knew about the business. He supported it completely, even when it meant I was working until midnight or answering emails during dinner. We'd agreed that if it took off, really took off, I'd quit the firm and work for myself full-time. In October of year 8, I landed 3 major contracts in 1 week. 2 law firms needed ongoing document review support, and 1 needed help preparing for a complicated trial. By November, I'd left my firm job. By December, I'd made more in 2 months than I'd made in 6 months at the firm. We were careful with the money at first. We paid off our credit cards. We built up our emergency fund. We put extra toward the mortgage. But we also let ourselves breathe a little. We weren't rich by any stretch, but we weren't living paycheck to paycheck anymore either. And I bought myself something I'd wanted for years, a car. Nothing flashy. Just a certified pre-owned luxury sedan, a few years old, well-maintained, with leather seats and all the safety features and a quiet, smooth ride that made me feel like my hard work had actually meant something. I'd earned it. Every mile I drove felt like proof that I'd built something real with my own 2 hands. I loved that car. The way it handled curves. The heated seats that warmed up in 30 seconds. The backup camera that actually worked. The Bluetooth system that didn't cut out randomly. It was mine in a way nothing else had ever been mine. We pulled up to Linda and George's house for Christmas in that car. I didn't think anything of it. We parked in the driveway behind Michelle's SUV, grabbed the gifts we'd brought, thoughtful gifts we'd actually put time into selecting, and walked up to the house. The wreath on the door was new, something elaborate with real pine boughs and gold ribbons and tiny ornaments woven throughout. Linda answered the door. She looked past me immediately, her gaze sliding over my shoulder toward the driveway. "Is that new?" she asked, not even bothering with hello. "It is," I said, smiling because I was genuinely proud of it. "I bought it a few weeks ago after landing some big contracts." Her expression shifted, subtle, but I'd spent 8 years learning to read Linda's micro-expressions the way an archaeologist learns to read ancient texts. Surprise gave way to something harder, something calculating, something that made the smile freeze on my face. "Must be nice," she said. The words hung in the air like smoke. Not quite hostile, but nowhere near friendly. Must be nice. As if I'd won the lottery instead of working 70-hour weeks for 3 years straight. "It's been a lot of work," I said carefully, "but yes. It's nice to see it paying off." Linda made a humming noise that could have meant anything and stepped aside to let us in. Dinner was tense in a way I couldn't quite identify at first. Linda kept steering the conversation toward money. How expensive everything was getting. How the cost of groceries had nearly doubled. How their property taxes had gone up again. How George's prescription medications cost more every year even with insurance. George nodded along, sighing heavily, mentioning that they were thinking about downsizing but the housing market was impossible. I didn't take the bait. I smiled and ate my ham and complimented the sweet potatoes and asked Michelle about her job. But I could feel Linda's eyes on me throughout the meal, assessing, calculating. After dinner we moved to the living room for presents. The tree was as elaborate as ever, groaning under the weight of gifts that I knew, without having to check, were distributed exactly as they'd been distributed every year prior. Brandon, now 12, unwrapped a high-end gaming laptop with specs that would make a professional streamer weep with joy. Olivia, 10, got a designer handbag, an actual designer handbag with a label and everything, and a matching wallet and a gift card to the mall so she could fill it properly. Emma, 7 years old, sitting on the floor in her Christmas dress that I'd ironed that morning, unwrapped a snow globe. A snow globe from a gas station truck stop. I knew it was from a truck stop because it still had the price sticker on the bottom. $4.99. There was a smudge on the glass where someone's fingerprint had dried. Emma turned it over in her hands. Shook it once, watching the fake snow swirl around a plastic snowman. Set it down carefully on the coffee table. She looked at it for a long moment, then looked at me, and I saw in her face that she'd finally stopped hoping for anything different. She didn't say anything. She'd learned not to. "We're really trying to be fair this year," Linda said, watching me watch Emma. "It's hard, with everything so expensive. We wanted to make sure we got something for everyone, even if it's small." I nodded. Smiled. Said nothing. The stone in my chest had turned to ice. David's knee was bouncing against mine, a nervous tick I'd learned over the years meant he was furious but trying to hide it. He put his hand over mine and squeezed so hard it hurt. Brandon was already setting up his laptop, oblivious. Olivia was taking selfies with her new handbag. Emma was sitting very still, staring at the snow globe like if she looked at it hard enough it might transform into something else. We were packing up to leave, Emma already in her coat, clutching the snow globe because she was a polite child who'd been raised to show gratitude even when she felt none, when Linda asked if David and I could talk to them privately for a moment. "Just quick," she said. "Before you go." David looked at me. I shrugged. We followed Linda and George into the kitchen, away from the living room where Michelle was helping her kids organize their hall of presents. Linda closed the door behind us. The kitchen smelled like ham and cinnamon, sweet and heavy. George leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Linda stood next to him, hands clasped in front of her like she was about to deliver difficult news to a patient. "We need to ask you something," Linda began, her voice careful and measured. "We know your business is doing well. We're so proud of you," George interjected quickly, which would have been touching if it wasn't literally the first time either of them had ever said anything like that to me. "In 8 years. Not when I passed the paralegal certification exam. Not when I got promoted at the firm. Not when I landed my first consulting client. But now, when they wanted something, suddenly they were proud. And we're in a bit of a bind financially," Linda continued smoothly, like she'd rehearsed this part too. "Probably with George, over coffee, while they decided how to approach me. Property taxes came in much higher than we expected. And George's medication costs have gone up significantly. We're trying to refinance the house to get some equity out, but that takes time, and in the meantime we're stretched very thin." She paused, letting the silence do the work. The silence and the implication, we're family. Family helps family. You have money now. We need money now. "We were hoping," George said, picking up where Linda left off like they were tag-teaming me, "that you might be able to help us out. Just a loan. We'd pay you back as soon as the refinance goes through. 2 months, 3 at most. $5,000, Linda added. "That would cover what we need and give us a little breathing room." I stared at them. These people who'd given my daughter a $4.99 snow globe while dropping hundreds, thousands, on their other grandchildren. These people who'd made Emma feel invisible for 7 years. These people who'd never once asked how my business was going, never congratulated me on my success, never acknowledged my existence as anything other than an inconvenient appendage to their son. And now they wanted $5,000. The ice in my chest cracked. Something hot and sharp flooded through me. "Let me make sure I understand," I said slowly, carefully. "You want me to loan you money? We wouldn't ask if it wasn't urgent," Linda said, and I could hear the edge in her voice now, the assumption that I'd say yes, that I'd be reasonable, that I'd understand. "Right. Urgent." I nodded. "Because you're on such a tight budget." "Exactly," George said, looking relieved that I was getting it. "A budget so tight that you can't afford property taxes. But somehow you managed to buy Brandon a $2,000 laptop this afternoon." Linda's face hardened. "That's different." "How?" "Those are gifts. For children. This is about keeping our home." "Is it?" I leaned back against the counter, crossing my arms to mirror George's posture. "Because from where I'm standing, you've had money for extravagant gifts every year for 8 years. You've had money for bounce houses and magicians and puppies and designer handbags. But when it comes to my daughter, suddenly you're on a fixed income. Suddenly you can't spare more than $5. "We treat all the grandchildren fairly," George said stiffly, and the sheer audacity of that statement nearly made me laugh. I did laugh, actually. A short, bitter sound that surprised even me. "No. You really, really don't. If you're going to be petty about gifts," Linda started, her voice rising. "Petty?" The word came out harder than I intended, sharp enough that Linda actually flinched. You think this is about being petty? Do you have any idea at all, what it's been like? Watching Emma realize, year after year, that her grandparents don't care about her? Watching her try to figure out what she did wrong? We've never treated her badly, Linda snapped. No, you just treated her like she doesn't exist. Which is somehow worse. I could feel my voice shaking now, years of swallowed words forcing their way out. Do you know when the last time you called to talk to Emma was? Do you even know what grade she's in? What her favorite subject is? What she wants to be when she grows up? Silence. Complete, damning silence. She's in second grade, I said quietly. Her favorite subject is science. Her favorite color is purple. She wants to be a veterinarian. She learned to ride a bike without training wheels this summer, and she was so proud she cried. She's reading at a 4th grade level. She's learning piano. She built a birdhouse with David in October and painted it herself. More silence. You don't know any of that, I continued, because you've never asked. You've never called her. You've never invited her over alone, just her, to spend time with her. You see her maybe 5 times a year, and only at events you can't avoid. And every single time, you make it clear that she matters less than Michelle's kids. This is about money, George said, his voice hard now, trying to redirect. Not about. It's about respect, I interrupted. You want me to respect you enough to hand over $5,000. But you've never respected me. You've never respected my daughter. You've never respected this family David and I built. Linda's face had gone red, splotchy. We've always been welcoming to you. No. You've been polite. There's a difference. I straightened up, grabbed my purse from where I'd set it on the counter. The answer is no. I'm not loaning you money. You can refinance, or you can sell some of the things you bought for Brandon and Olivia. I'm sure that laptop will fetch a decent price on the secondary market. You're being cruel, Linda whispered, and there were actual tears in her eyes now. I might have felt bad about that if I could remember a single time she'd cried over how her treatment affected Emma. No, I said. I'm being honest. Maybe for the first time in 8 years. And you don't like it because it's inconvenient and because it means you can't keep pretending that everything's fine. I walked toward the kitchen door. George moved to block it. Sarah, he said, and his voice had shifted to something placating, conciliatory. Let's not make rash decisions. We're family. Then act like it, I said. Act like Emma is family. Act like she deserves the same love and attention you give your other grandchildren. Until then, don't ask me for anything. I stepped around him, opened the door, and walked out. David was in the living room, already holding Emma's coat. He took one look at my face and stood up. We're leaving, I said. He didn't argue. Didn't ask questions. He just scooped up Emma, grabbed our things, and followed me out. Michelle called after us from the couch, wait, what's, but we were already gone, the front door closing behind us with a decisive click. Emma fell asleep in the back seat before we even hit the highway. I watched her in the rearview mirror, clutching her snow globe, and felt something crack open inside me. Not the ice. Something deeper. Some reservoir of grief I'd been keeping sealed for years. David waited until we were 10 minutes from home before he spoke. What happened? I told him. All of it. The request for money. The justifications. The way they tried to frame it as an emergency while standing in a kitchen that still smelled like a $200 Christmas dinner. He was quiet for a long time. I watched the road, the white lines blurring past in the darkness. Good, he said finally. I turned to look at him. Good? I'm glad you said no. I'm glad you finally told them. His voice was tight, wounded with emotion I couldn't quite parse. I should have done it years ago. I should have stood up for Emma. For you. I'm sorry I didn't. You were trying to keep the peace. I was being a coward. His hands flexed on the steering wheel. Emma asked me last week if we could skip Christmas with my parents. She's 7 years old, and she's already dreading time with them. That's my fault. I let this happen. It's not your fault. Yes, it is. I saw what they were doing. I made excuses. I told myself it would get better. He glanced at me, and in the dashboard light I could see his eyes were wet. It didn't get better. It got worse. And I let you carry it alone. We carried it together. No. You carried it. You smiled and said thank you and made it okay for all of us. He swallowed hard. I'm done pretending this is normal. I'm done letting them hurt my daughter. Linda called the next morning at 8 a.m. David answered, put her on speaker without telling her. I think we need to talk about what happened yesterday, she began, her voice icy and formal. There's nothing to talk about, David said calmly. You asked for money. Sarah said no. That's her right. It's about how she said it. The accusations she made. The things she said about how we treat Emma. Were they untrue? Pause. Long enough that I could picture Linda's face, her mouth opening and closing as she searched for words. We've always done our best for all our grandchildren, she said finally. No, you haven't. You've done what's convenient. Michelle lives 10 minutes away, so you invest in her kids. We live farther, and you've decided that's a good enough reason to treat Emma like an afterthought. That's not fair, Mom. David's voice cracked on the word. Stop. Please just stop. I've watched you do this for 8 years. I kept telling myself it wasn't as bad as it seemed. That you'd come around. That maybe Sarah was reading too much into it. But she wasn't. Emma knows, Mom. She's known for years. She asked me last week if you hate her. I heard Linda's sharp intake of breath through the phone. And I didn't know what to tell her, David continued, because I don't understand it either. She's your granddaughter. She's smart and kind and funny and she loves you even though you've given her every reason not to. And you've treated her like she's invisible. We would never. You did. You do. And I'm not going to keep subjecting her to it. Are you saying you don't want us in her life? Linda's voice had gone shrill, panicky. I'm saying if you want to be in her life, you need to actually be in it. Not just show up for Christmas and hand her garbage while her cousins get the world. You need to call her. Visit her. Learn about her. Treat her like she matters. Because she does. She matters more than anything. This is Sarah's doing. She's turned you against us. No, Mom. This is your doing. And if you can't see that, then maybe we do need some space. He hung up. His hand was shaking as he set the phone down. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Michelle called an hour later, furious. How could you do this to them? They're devastated. Mom was crying all night. Did she cry when Emma asked me if her grandparents hated her? David asked, his voice flat. Silence on the other end. Then, you're exaggerating. Emma's fine. No, Michelle. She's not fine. She's learned to expect nothing from them. From you too, actually. When's the last time you invited her to play with your kids? That's different, it's not. You've gone along with this for years. You've watched them favor your kids and said nothing. Maybe if you visited more. We've invited them to every school event, every recital, every birthday party. They've come to two. Two, Michelle. Both times they left early. I heard her breathing, sharp and fast. You're being ridiculous. They're elderly. They can't. They're 68 and 70, David said. They drive to your house twice a week. They went to Brandon's soccer tournament in Pennsylvania last month. A 4-hour drive. But they can't manage 40 minutes to see Emma perform in the school play? Michelle made a frustrated sound. You're breaking up this family over money. Over a stupid loan. That's what this is really about. No. This is about Emma. It's always been about Emma. The loan just made it impossible to ignore anymore. She hung up on him. George sent an email that afternoon. Subject line, disappointed. The email was 3 paragraphs of carefully worded accusations. We were entitled. We were ungrateful. We were poisoning Emma against her grandparents. We were using their momentary financial difficulty as an excuse to be vindictive. We needed to think about what family really meant. David replied with a single attachment, a spreadsheet. He'd gone back through 8 years of Christmas presents, adding up approximate values. He included photos where he had them, screenshots from retail websites showing original prices, receipts I'd saved without really knowing why. The numbers were stark and undeniable. Brandon, $6,400 total over 8 years. Average $800 per year. Olivia, $5,900 total over 8 years. Average $737 per year. Emma, $200 total over 8 years. Average $25 per year. Below the spreadsheet, David wrote, "This is what family means to you. These are your priorities. Emma deserves better. So does Sarah. So do I." George didn't respond. But here's the thing about families, they're messy. They're complicated. Not everyone picks the same side. David's cousin Rebecca reached out 2 days later via text. I need to tell you something I should have said years ago. She called that evening. I answered on speaker so David could hear. I've watched them do this to your family for years, Rebecca said, her voice tight. And I've watched them do a version of it to mine. My kids aren't ignored like Emma, but they're definitely second tier. Not like Michelle's kids, but not like strangers either. Somewhere in between. I thought I was imagining it. I thought maybe I was being oversensitive. You weren't, I said. I know that now. I should have said something. I'm sorry I didn't. She paused. There's a group chat. Michelle, Linda, George, my mom, David's uncle. They're calling you guys selfish. They're saying you're vindictive and cruel. But I've been in that chat reading everything, and all I can think about is Emma's face at Christmas. The way she looked at that snow globe. You noticed, David said quietly. Everyone noticed. We just didn't say anything. And I'm so sorry for that. Rebecca wasn't the only one. David's uncle Mark sent a private message, your mom has always played favorites. Did it with me and Michelle's dad too when we were kids. I learned to live with it. But you don't have to. A family friend reached out. I stopped bringing my kids around years ago because of how Linda treats them. I couldn't watch it anymore. Good for you for finally saying something. Michelle's best friend, of all people, sent me a DM. I've tried to tell Michelle for years that her parents are different with Emma. She doesn't want to see it because it benefits her kids. But you're not wrong. You're not imagining it. The support came in quietly, privately, from people who'd been watching the same thing I'd been watching but didn't know how to address it without causing a scene. But there was also the other half, the ones who thought I destroyed everything over nothing. The ones who sent messages calling me petty, materialistic, ungrateful. The ones who said children shouldn't be raised to expect expensive gifts. The ones who said I was teaching Emma to be entitled. I read those messages too. I let them sit with me. Turned them over, examining them for truth. Was I teaching Emma to be entitled? Or was I teaching her that she deserved to be seen? Was I being materialistic? Or was I finally acknowledging that gifts aren't just objects, they're symbols of thought, effort, love? I still don't know the answer. Maybe both things are true at once. 3 weeks after Christmas, Michelle showed up at our house unannounced. David answered the door. I came to stand beside him, and we both looked at his sister, this woman who'd been present for every slight, every uneven Christmas, every moment Emma realized she wasn't valued the same way. I need to talk to you, Michelle said. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. David stepped aside to let her in. We sat in the living room, Michelle on one couch, David and me on the other, a coffee table between us like a demilitarized zone. I've been thinking about what you said, Michelle started. About Emma. About the gifts. About all of it. I waited. David's hand found mine. I didn't see it, she continued. Or I didn't want to see it. My kids were happy, and that was all I cared about. I thought you were being oversensitive. I thought Emma was too young to notice. She looked up at us, and her face was blotchy and raw. But then Brandon asked me last week why Emma never comes over anymore. And Olivia said she missed her. And I realized, they noticed too. They've noticed for years that their cousin isn't around much. And I never thought about why. Because we stopped trying, I said quietly. We stopped subjecting her to it. I know. I understand now. I talked to Mom and Dad. She twisted her hands in her lap. They don't see it. They genuinely don't understand what they did wrong. They keep saying they treat all the grandkids the same. They don't, David said flatly. I know. I showed them your spreadsheet. Mom cried. Dad got angry. They said you can't measure love in dollars. They're right, I said. You can't. But you can measure attention, effort, time, thought. And by every one of those metrics, they failed Emma. Michelle nodded slowly. Mom keeps saying you're only angry because they asked for money. That if they hadn't asked, you wouldn't have blown up. That's not true, David said. The money was just the catalyst. We've been angry for years. We just didn't know how to say it without sounding petty. You don't sound petty, Michelle said, and she was crying now, quietly. You sound like parents protecting their kid. I would have done the same thing if someone treated Brandon or Olivia that way. I should have done the same thing when I saw them treating Emma that way. I'm sorry. It wasn't a full reconciliation. The damage was too deep for that. But it was something. A crack in the wall that had divided us. Linda and George sent a card in February. Inside was a check for $200 made out to Emma. No note. Just the check and a generic card with flowers on the front. I stared at it for a long time, trying to decode the message. Was this an apology? An acknowledgement? Or just another token gesture meant to make them feel better without actually changing anything? David left the decision to me. Your call, he said. I cashed the check. Put it in Emma's college fund. Sent Linda and George a thank you note, polite, brief, and personal. They called a week later. Linda on the main phone, George on the extension. Their voices were stiff, formal, like they were reading from a script someone had helped them prepare. We'd like to visit Emma, Linda said. If that's okay. On one condition, David said before I could answer. This isn't a one-time thing. If you visit, you commit to regular visits. At least once a month. And you call her in between. You show up for her school events. You learn about her life. Silence. Long enough that I thought they might refuse. Okay, George said finally. We can do that. And you don't bring gifts to make up for lost time, I added. You just bring yourselves. You spend time with her. That's what she needs. All right, Linda said, and her voice was quieter now, smaller. When can we come? They came the following Saturday. Showed up at 2 p.m. with a store-bought coffee cake and nervous smiles. Emma answered the door with me standing behind her. She looked at her grandparents with this careful, guarded expression, polite but distant, like she was greeting acquaintances she barely remembered. Hi Mimi. Hi Pop. Hi sweetheart, Linda said, and I could hear her voice crack on the words. They sat in our living room for 2 hours. It was awkward at first, stilted conversation, long pauses, Emma answering questions in careful one-word responses. But then George asked about the birdhouse hanging in our backyard, and Emma lit up. I built that with Daddy. Do you want to see? She took them outside, showed them the birdhouse, explained how they'd sanded the wood and picked the paint colors, and where they'd hung it so the birds would feel safe. George asked questions, real questions, specific questions, and Emma answered them with growing enthusiasm. Linda asked about school. Emma told her about the science fair project she was working on, a study of plant growth in different light conditions. Linda listened. Actually listened, without checking her phone or glancing at her watch. When they left, Linda hugged Emma. A real hug, not the brief pat on the head thing she usually did. Can I call you this week? She asked. Maybe on Tuesday? Emma looked at me. I nodded. She turned back to Linda. Okay. Linda called on Tuesday. Talked to Emma for 20 minutes about school and friends and the science fair. Called again the following Saturday just to say hi. They visited again 3 weeks later. Then 2 weeks after that. The visits were still awkward. Years of distance don't disappear in a few afternoons, but that they were trying. Or at least performing the motions of trying, which was more than they'd done before. Emma remained cautious. She was polite, responsive, even warm at times. But there was a guardedness in her that hadn't been there before all this started. A wariness. She'd learned that people could disappoint you, even people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. I don't know if that guard will ever come down completely. Part of me hopes it will. Part of me thinks maybe it shouldn't, that maybe she's learning an important lesson about protecting her heart. It's been 9 months since that Christmas. 9 months since I said no in Linda and George's kitchen. Linda and George have visited Emma 8 times. They've called her probably 15. They came to her science fair in March and her piano recital in May. They're learning about her, slowly, in the way you learn about someone you're meeting for the first time even though you've known them their whole life. Michelle brings her kids over occasionally. Brandon and Olivia are good with Emma, better than I expected, actually. They seem genuinely happy to see her, like they missed having her around. Last month Olivia asked if Emma could sleep over at her house. We said yes. Emma had fun. Came home talking about movies they watched and how Olivia let her try on all her jewelry. It's not perfect. It's not what it should have been from the beginning. But it's better than it was. David's relationship with his parents is still strained. There's a formality to their interactions now, caution that wasn't there before. They talk on the phone once a week, but the conversations are surface level. How's work? How's the weather? How's Emma? They don't dig deeper. I don't think any of them know how. As for me and Linda and George, we're civil. Polite. We exchange pleasantries when they visit. I offer them coffee and they accept. We talk about neutral topics, traffic, weather, the new restaurant that opened downtown. We don't talk about Christmas. We don't talk about the money. We don't talk about the 8 years of hurt that brought us to this point. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe some things don't need to be rehashed endlessly. Or maybe we're all just avoiding the hard conversations because it's easier than facing how much damage was done. People still ask me if I regret how I handled it. If I should have been gentler, kinder, more understanding. If I should have just loaned them the money and kept the peace. The answer is complicated. Do I regret finally standing up for Emma? No. Not for a second. Do I regret the way it fractured David's family? Yes. I hate that Emma's cousins are caught in the middle. I hate that David feels like he had to choose between his parents and his daughter. I hate that holidays are awkward now, that there's tension where there used to be at least the appearance of harmony. But would I change what I did? Would I loan them the money if I could do it over? No. Because some people will take everything you give them and still expect more. They'll frame their neglect as normal and your boundaries as cruelty. They'll call you selfish for refusing to fund the same patterns that hurt you and yours. And they'll be shocked, genuinely, thoroughly shocked, when you finally say no. The loan wasn't really about $5,000. It was about whether I was willing to pretend that 8 years of favoritism hadn't happened. Whether I was willing to bankroll people who couldn't be bothered to know my daughter's favorite color or call her on her birthday. I wasn't willing. I'm still not willing. Emma deserved better. She still deserves better. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone you love is to stop letting other people treat them like they're disposable. Last week, Emma came home from school with an assignment: write about someone you admire. She wrote about her teacher, Miss Rodriguez, who makes science fun and always remembers to ask about her piano lessons. Not about Mimi and Pop. Not yet. Maybe someday. Maybe if they keep showing up, keep calling, keep proving that they're serious about being present in her life. Maybe Emma will learn to trust them again. Or maybe she won't. Maybe the damage is permanent. Maybe she'll grow up remembering that she had grandparents who didn't think she was worth their time until someone made a scene about it. I don't know yet. I'm trying to be okay with not knowing. What I do know is this: I would make the same choice again. I would say no again. I would walk out of that kitchen again with my head high and my conscience clear. Because at the end of the day, my job isn't to keep David's family comfortable. It's not to maintain the status quo or smooth over dysfunction or pretend everything's fine when it isn't. My job is to protect my daughter. To teach her that she has value. To show her that she doesn't have to accept crumbs and call it love. And I did that. Finally, after 8 years of swallowing my words and smiling through the hurt, I did that. Would I loan them the money now, after all this? After the awkward visits and the phone calls and the slow, painful rebuild of something that maybe shouldn't have broken in the first place? Honestly? Still no. Not because I'm holding a grudge. Not because I want them to suffer. But because some people need to learn that access to your resources isn't a given, it's earned through respect and relationship. Linda and George spent 8 years showing me that Emma wasn't worth their time. They don't get to suddenly decide she's worth my money. But I did do something else. Last month, I opened a savings account in Emma's name. Started with $5,000, the exact amount they'd asked to borrow. I'm adding to it every month, building it up, making sure that when she's older and needs money for college or a car or whatever dreams she decides to chase, it's there waiting for her. Because that money doesn't belong to Linda and George. It never did. It belongs to the child they overlooked. The granddaughter they undervalued. The little girl who learned too young that love isn't always equal, but who's learning now, slowly, carefully, that she's worth fighting for. That's where the $5,000 went. That's where all the money I didn't loan them is going. Into Emma's future. Into proof that she matters. Into a foundation she can build on when she's ready. And if Linda and George ever ask me again if I regret saying no, I'll tell them to check Emma's college fund. I'll show them what I chose to invest in instead. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't withholding money from people who don't deserve it. It's investing in the person they should have valued all along. The last time Linda and George visited, they brought Emma a microscope. Not a toy one, a real one, with multiple lenses and a proper light source. Age-appropriate, thoughtful, something she'd actually wanted for her science projects. Emma's face lit up when she opened it. "This is so cool. Thank you." She set it up in her room immediately, ran to get pond water samples she'd been collecting, started examining them with an intensity that made Linda smile. "She's really into science, isn't she?" Linda said, watching Emma peer through the lens. "She has been for years," I said quietly. "Since she was 5. Linda flinched. The implication landed: "You would have known that if you'd been paying attention." But she didn't get defensive. She just nodded slowly. Tell me about her projects. So I did. I told her about the plant growth experiment, the butterfly garden, the way Emma wants to study veterinary medicine someday. I told her about the way Emma's face lights up when she learns something new, the questions she asks, the connections she makes. Linda listened. Really listened, in a way she never had before. I'm sorry, she said after I finished. Not to excuse herself. Not to explain. Just, I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. It couldn't be enough to erase 8 years. But it was something. Emma asked me a few weeks ago if I thought Mimi and Pop loved her now. We were in the kitchen making dinner, just the two of us. David was working late. Emma was chopping vegetables, carefully, the way I taught her, and the question came out of nowhere, casual as if she'd asked about the weather. Do you think they love me now? I put down my knife. Turned to face her fully. What do you think? She shrugged, still focused on the carrots she was cutting. I don't know. They call me more. They visit. They gave me the microscope. But what? But it feels different than how they are with Brandon and Olivia. Like they're trying really hard. Like it's work. She was 8 years old and she could already tell the difference between effortless love and love that had to be consciously chosen. Between the warmth that comes naturally and the warmth that comes from obligation. Love isn't always easy, I said carefully. Sometimes people have to learn how to show it better. Mimi and Pop are learning. But they shouldn't have to learn, Emma said, and there was no anger in her voice. Just observation. Just fact. They knew how to love Brandon and Olivia from the start. I didn't have an answer for that. Because she was right. You know what I think? Emma said, moving on to the next carrot. I think maybe they love me now because you made them. Not because they wanted to. Does that bother you? She considered this. Kind of. But also, I'm glad you did it. Because at least now they try. 8 years old, and she'd already learned to accept the complicated, imperfect nature of family love. Already learned that sometimes people need to be pushed into doing the right thing. Already learned that you can be grateful for something even when it hurts. I hugged her then, there in the kitchen with half-chopped vegetables on the cutting board. Held her tight and hoped she knew, really knew, bone deep, that my love for her had never been complicated. Had never needed to be forced or learned or chosen consciously. She hugged me back. I love you too, Mama. Here's what I've learned from all of this. Some people will never understand what they did wrong. They'll apologize for how you felt instead of for what they did. They'll change their behavior because they were caught, not because they had an epiphany. And sometimes you have to decide if that's enough. For Emma's sake, I've decided it has to be. She deserves grandparents, even imperfect ones. Even ones who had to be forced into showing up. But I'll never forget. I'll never pretend those 8 years didn't happen. I'll never trust Linda and George the way I might have if they'd valued Emma from the start. And I'll never, ever loan them money. Because the loan was never about the money. It was about whether I was willing to fund my own daughter's devaluation. Whether I would participate in the system that hurt her. I wouldn't. I won't. My answer was no. And every time I deposit money into Emma's college fund, every time I watch her use that microscope, every time she tells me about a phone call with her grandmother that went well, I know I made the right choice. Not the easy choice. Not the comfortable choice. But the right one. The one that taught Emma she's worth fighting for. And if that makes me the villain in Linda and George's story, if that makes me the daughter-in-law who destroyed Christmas and broke up the family over nothing, well, I can live with that. Because Emma can't live with being invisible. And I'll choose her every single time.
Story 2. At Christmas dinner, my sister announced, "We need to talk about the elephant in the room, you. You're the charity case of this family. We include you because Mom feels guilty." Everyone laughed. I stood up, grabbed my coat. My uncle added, "Don't be dramatic. Where else would you go?" I didn't answer. What they didn't know, I'd been co-signing my parents' house for 3 years after their bankruptcy. The next day, I removed myself from the deed. 2 months later, they couldn't refinance. My mother called crying, "How could you do this to us?" I replied, "Charity cases can't afford to help. Call your other kids." I co-signed my parents' mortgage 3 years ago, and nobody at Christmas dinner knew. That's the thing about being the quiet one, the responsible one, the one everyone forgets is even in the room until they need something. You become invisible in all the ways that matter. And invisible people hear things. Invisible people know things. Invisible people can do things that no one sees coming. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to that Christmas dinner, the one that changed everything. The one where my sister Claire stood up, wine glass in hand, and decided to turn me into the evening's entertainment. The dining room was too hot. Mom always cranked the thermostat up to 78 degrees during the holidays, like she was trying to recreate some tropical paradise in suburban Connecticut. The turkey sat in the center of the table, golden and glistening, surrounded by dishes that represented hours of labor I'd helped with but would get no credit for. Claire had shown up at 4 with store-bought pie. My brother Daniel had arrived at 5 with his wife and kids, arms empty. I'd been there since 9 in the morning, peeling potatoes. We were on dessert when Claire stood up. She was wearing a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her hair in perfect waves that took 2 hours at a salon. She worked in marketing for some tech startup and never let anyone forget it. 3 glasses of Pinot Noir had made her cheeks flushed and her confidence dangerous. "Okay, everyone," she announced, tapping her fork against her glass. "Before we finish up, I think we need to address something." My stomach dropped. You know that feeling when you're a kid and the teacher says we need to talk about what happened at recess, and even though you didn't do anything wrong, your body goes into panic mode? That. "Oh, honey, not now," Mom said, but she was smiling. She was always smiling at Claire. The golden child who could do no wrong, who'd married a lawyer, who'd given her 2 grandchildren before anyone else. "No, Mom, it's important." Claire looked around the table, making sure she had everyone's attention. Uncle Pete put down his phone. Aunt Linda stopped cutting her pie. Daniel leaned back in his chair with this smirk that told me he knew exactly what was coming. They'd planned this. "We need to talk about the elephant in the room," Claire continued, and then her eyes landed on me. You're the charity case of this family. We include you because Mom feels guilty." The laughter started with Daniel. Then Uncle Pete. Then Aunt Linda's uncomfortable giggle that she probably thought sounded sympathetic but just sounded mean. Even Mom was smiling, shaking her head like Claire had made a joke that was naughty but harmless. My face was burning. I could feel sweat prickling at my hairline, could feel my hands going cold despite the oppressive heat of the room. The cranberry sauce I'd eaten sat in my stomach like a stone. "I mean, let's be honest," Claire went on, emboldened by the laughter. "You're 32, Julia. You work as what is it again? A bookkeeper? You rent that sad little apartment downtown. You drive a Honda from 2009. You're single. You haven't contributed to a family gathering in any meaningful way since." "Claire, that's enough," Dad said, but there was no force behind it. He was cutting another piece of pie. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." Claire sat down, looking pleased with herself. "We love you, Jules, but you have to admit, you're not exactly the success story of the family." I stood up. My chair scraped against the hardwood floor, too loud in the sudden silence. I could feel everyone's eyes on me as I reached for my coat, draped over the back of the empty chair beside me. "Don't be dramatic," Uncle Pete said. His voice had that edge of annoyance men get when women react to their nonsense. "Where else would you go?" I didn't answer. I just pulled on my coat, grabbed my purse, and walked to the door. Behind me, I heard Mom calling my name, but it sounded distant, like she was underwater. Or maybe I was. The cold air outside hit my face like a slap, sharp and clarifying. I stood on the front porch for a moment, breathing in the December night, watching my breath fog in front of me. Through the window, I could see them all sitting there, probably already moving on to other topics. Probably relieved I'd left so they could really talk about me. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire, "Don't be mad. It was just a joke." I deleted it. Here's what they didn't know. 3 years ago, my parents were bankrupt. Not the kind of bankruptcy where you're broke and scared, they'd already been living that for a while. No, this was the legal kind, the kind where you've maxed out credit cards and taken out bad loans and refinanced the house twice and now the bank is coming for everything. Dad had made some investments that went south. Mom had a spending problem she refused to acknowledge. Together, they'd created a financial catastrophe that was about to leave them homeless at 65. I got the call on a Tuesday evening. Mom crying so hard I could barely understand her. Dad in the background, his voice sharp with panic. They needed someone to co-sign on the house. The bank wouldn't refinance without it. They were going to lose everything. "What about Claire?" I'd asked. "Or Daniel?" "Claire and Brian are saving for their second house," Mom said. "And Daniel just had the twins. We can't ask them. But they could ask me. The single one. The one with the small apartment and the old car. The one who didn't have a family to support or a big mortgage of her own. The charity case. Please, Julia," Dad had said. "We're desperate." So I did it. I went to the bank, signed the papers, put my name on their mortgage. Tied my financial future to theirs because they were my parents and they needed me and I was stupid enough to believe that family meant something. They never told Claire or Daniel. I asked them not to, and they agreed a little too quickly. "This is our business," Dad had said. "No need to worry the others. Translation: we don't want them to know how bad we messed up. We don't want them to think less of us. For 3 years, I paid attention to their mortgage like it was my own. I checked in monthly to make sure they were making payments. I reviewed their finances with them, gently suggesting cheaper alternatives when mom wanted to redecorate the living room or dad wanted a new fishing boat. I became the invisible safety net, the one thing standing between them and foreclosure. And not once, did anyone say, thank you. The day after Christmas, I called the bank. I'd barely slept, lying awake in my sad little apartment, staring at the ceiling and replaying Claire's words over and over. Charity case. The laughter echoing in my head like a bad song you can't shake. I need to remove myself as a cosigner for my parents' mortgage, I told the woman on the phone. There was a pause. Let me pull up the account. Can you confirm your information? I gave her everything she needed. There was typing. More silence. Okay, Ms. Hartley, I see the account. However, removing a cosigner typically requires refinancing the entire loan. Your parents would need to qualify on their own too. They won't qualify, I said. I know they won't. That's why they needed me in the first place. But I'm still removing myself. What's the process? More typing. The woman's voice became careful, professional. You'll need to submit a formal request. We'll review it and notify the primary borrowers. If they can't refinance to remove you, we'll need to discuss options. Options meaning they might lose the house. I can't speculate on outcomes, but yes, that's a possibility. Perfect, I said. Send me the paperwork. I hung up and sat in my kitchen, hands shaking slightly. Through the window, I could see the building across the street, its windows lit up with post-Christmas normalcy. People cleaning up wrapping paper. Kids playing with new toys. Regular families doing regular things. My phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. She called 3 more times that day. Then Dad called twice. Then Daniel sent a text, Mom says you're not answering. Everything okay? I didn't respond to any of them. I filled out the bank's paperwork, scanned it, and emailed it back within 2 hours. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, cheap stuff from Trader Joe's that Claire would probably mock, and sat on my couch, and felt nothing at all. Here's the thing about being the responsible one, people start to believe that's all you are. They think you don't have feelings, don't have limits, don't have a breaking point. You're just this steady, reliable presence in their lives, always there to catch them when they fall, never asking for anything in return. Until one day, you do. The bank processed my request faster than I expected. Within a week, my parents received a letter informing them that their cosigner, me, had formally requested removal from the loan. To maintain their mortgage, they would need to refinance within 60 days. Given their credit history and income, the letter strongly suggested they contact the bank immediately to discuss their options. I knew the moment they opened it because my phone exploded. 12 missed calls. 23 text messages. 3 voicemails that were just mom crying. I waited until evening to listen to them. The first one was mom, her voice high and panicked. Julia, please call me back. The bank sent us something and we don't understand what's happening. Please, honey, we need to talk to you right away. The second one was Dad, trying to sound calm and failing. Julia, it's your father. We need to discuss this bank situation. Call us as soon as you get this. Don't do anything else until we talk. The third one was Mom again. How could you do this? How could you do this to us? We're your parents. I deleted them all. Claire called next. Jules, what the heck? Mom is freaking out about something with the house. She says you did something. What's going on? Ask her, I said, and hung up. Daniel called an hour later. Julia, I don't know what's happening, but you need to fix this. Mom sounds like she's having a breakdown. Maybe Claire can help, I suggested. Or you. You both have so much more than me, after all. What are you talking about? I'm just a charity case, Daniel. I can't afford to help anyone. I hung up on him too. It took 2 weeks for them to figure out what to do. 2 weeks of my phone ringing constantly, of text messages that ranged from pleading to angry to manipulative. 2 weeks of voicemails I didn't listen to and emails I didn't open. I went to work. I came home. I lived my small, sad life in my small, sad apartment with my old car and my bookkeeping job that apparently wasn't impressive enough for the Hartley family standards. And I slept better than I had in 3 years. On a Thursday in mid-January, Mom showed up at my apartment. I saw her through the peephole, standing in the hallway, looking smaller than I remembered, her coat pulled tight against the cold. She'd aged since Christmas. Or maybe I was just noticing it for the first time. I opened the door. Julia. Her voice cracked on my name. Can I come in? I stepped back and let her enter. She looked around my apartment, the one she'd never visited before, despite my living here for 4 years, with an expression I couldn't read. It's nice, she said quietly. Cozy. What do you want, Mom? She flinched. We need to talk about the house. Okay. The bank says we have to refinance. Without you on the mortgage, our credit isn't good enough. We've been to 3 different lenders, and nobody will approve us. She was wringing her hands, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when she was stressed. Julia, we're going to lose the house. I know. You know? Her voice rose. You know, and you're okay with this? Why wouldn't I be? I'm just the charity case, remember? I should probably focus on my own problems. Claire didn't mean. Yes, she did. I crossed my arms. And you laughed. You all laughed. It was a joke, sweetheart. You're being too sensitive. There it was. The line I'd been waiting for. You're being too sensitive. The universal shutdown, the way to make everything my fault, to make my hurt feelings the problem instead of their cruelty. Get out, I said. Julia, get out of my apartment. Now. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. I'm your mother. Then you should have acted like it. She left, slamming the door hard enough that my neighbor's dog started barking. I stood in the middle of my living room, my heart pounding, my hands shaking, and felt something like relief flood through my body. They tried everything after that. Dad called from a different number, trying to reason with me. Julia, I understand you're upset about Christmas. It was inappropriate, and we should have said something. But what you're doing now, it's too far. You're punishing your mother and me for something Claire said. I'm not punishing anyone, I said calmly. I'm protecting myself. 3 years ago, you asked me to put myself at financial risk to save you. I did that because you're my parents and I love you. But I'm not obligated to keep doing it, especially not when I'm treated like garbage by this family. Nobody treats you like. Dad, at Christmas dinner, your daughter announced to the entire family that I'm a charity case, and you said nothing. You cut your pie and said nothing. Silence. You didn't defend me. You didn't tell her to stop. You let them laugh at me like I was the entertainment. So yes, I'm removing myself from your mortgage. If you can't refinance, that's not my problem. That's yours. You're going to let us lose our home over hurt feelings? The audacity of that question actually made me laugh. You're going to lose your home because you bankrupted yourselves and then expected your charity case daughter to save you forever. I'm done saving you. I hung up. Claire tried next, her voice syrupy sweet. Jules, I'm so sorry about what I said. I was drunk and stupid. You know I love you, right? You're not a charity case. You're my sister. Why are you calling, Claire? I wanted to apologize and, look, I talked to Mom. I know about the house situation. I didn't know you were helping them. That's really amazing of you. Was amazing. Past tense. Right, but. Julia, they're going to lose everything. Can't you why don't you help them? What? You and Brian. You're saving for a second house, right? Seems like you have the money. Co-sign their refinance. Problem solved. She sputtered. We can't our financial situation is complicated. Brian's firm is going through some changes and, so you can't afford it. It's not that simple. But it was that simple for me? That's different. You don't have kids. You don't have a spouse. You have more flexibility. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Claire, let me be very clear, I am never helping Mom and Dad again. I am never co-signing anything for anyone in this family again. And if you call me about this one more time, I'm blocking your number. You're being selfish. Yes, I agreed. I am. It's amazing what a charity case can get away with when she stops caring what people think. I blocked her number before she could respond. Daniel was the last one to try. He showed up at my office on a Friday afternoon, looking uncomfortable in his business casual attire. My coworker Jenny raised her eyebrows at me when she saw him in the waiting area. Your brother's here, she said, like it was a question. I know. Give me a minute. I found him standing by the window, looking out at the parking lot. When he turned around, his expression was strange, caught between anger and something that might have been respect. You're really not going to help them, he said. No preamble. No, I'm not. They're going to lose the house, Julia. I heard. He shook his head slowly. I didn't know you had this in you. What? Boundaries? Cruelty. That word hung in the air between us like smoke. Cruelty. I turned it over in my mind, examined it from all angles. Was this cruel? Was it cruel to stop setting myself on fire to keep other people warm? You know what's cruel, Daniel? I said quietly. Watching your sister get mocked at Christmas dinner and not saying a single word in her defense. That's cruel. Calling someone a charity case in front of the entire family and then expecting them to continue making sacrifices for you. That's cruel. It was just Christmas dinner trash talk. Claire was drunk. And you? Were you drunk when you smirked? Was Uncle Pete drunk when he asked where else I would go? Was Mom drunk when she laughed? He looked away. I spent 3 years managing mom and dad's finances, I continued. 3 years making sure they didn't lose their house. 3 years putting my own financial health at risk. And in all that time, not one of you noticed. Not one of you asked if I needed help, or thanked me, or acknowledged what I was doing. We didn't know. Exactly. You didn't know because you didn't care enough to know. I was invisible right up until you needed something from me. Now I'm choosing to stay invisible. Permanently. Daniel's jaw tightened. So this is it? You're just done with the family? I'm done being the family's safety net. There's a difference. Mom is devastated. Then maybe she should have thought about that before she laughed at me. You're really going to let them lose everything over this? I met his eyes steadily. They're not losing everything. They're losing a house they couldn't afford in the first place. A house they bankrupted themselves trying to keep. Maybe this is actually the best thing for them. How is being homeless the best thing? They won't be homeless. They'll rent, like I do. Like millions of people do. It's not the end of the world, Daniel. It's just the end of the illusion that they're more successful than they actually are. He stared at me for a long moment. I don't even know who you are anymore. That's the thing, I said softly. You never did. He left without another word. The house sold in March. I didn't go to see it, didn't drive by one last time, didn't indulge in any of the nostalgia or sentimentality that probably would have made me feel like a monster. I saw the listing online. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, updated kitchen, needs some cosmetic work. It sold for $20,000 more than the mortgage payoff, which meant my parents walked away with a small chunk of change after fees. Mom called me once more, 2 months after they'd moved into a rental house across town. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Julia. Her voice was flat, exhausted. How could you do this to us? Not how are you? Not I'm sorry about Christmas. Just straight to the accusation, the blame, the certainty that I was the villain in this story. Charity cases can't afford to help, I said. Call your other kids. I hung up before she could respond. That was 3 months ago now. I haven't heard from any of them since. No calls. No texts. No surprise visits. It's like I've been erased from the family entirely, which is funny considering I was barely there to begin with. Here's what I've learned. Being the responsible one is a trap. It's a role you get assigned because you're competent and reliable and stupid enough to think that doing the right thing will be recognized and appreciated. But it won't. People will take and take and take from you, and the moment you stop giving, they'll act like you're the problem. Family doesn't mean you get to treat people however you want because they're obligated to forgive you. Family should mean you treat people better because you love them. And when family fails at that, you're allowed to walk away. I'm not saying I don't have regrets. Sometimes I lie awake at night and wonder if I overreacted, if there was a better way to handle things, if I should have tried to have a real conversation with them instead of just pulling the rug out. But then I remember the laughter. I remember Uncle Pete's sneer. I remember Mom's smile as Claire called me a charity case. And I remember 3 years of thankless sacrifice that nobody even knew about because I wasn't worth acknowledging. I'm in my apartment right now, the one Claire called sad, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise. In an hour, I'll go to my bookkeeping job that apparently isn't impressive enough. Tonight, I'll come home to my quiet life and my old car and my solitude. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Better than okay, actually. I'm free. The bank paperwork is filed away in a folder marked done. My parents are someone else's problem now. Claire and Daniel and Uncle Pete can all sit around some future holiday dinner and talk about how cruel I am, how unreasonable, how I abandoned the family over nothing. Let them. I know the truth. I know what I carried for 3 years. I know what I was willing to sacrifice and how little it mattered to any of them. Sometimes the elephant in the room isn't the person everyone's looking at. Sometimes it's the secret everyone's keeping. And sometimes the best thing you can do is stop pretending the elephant isn't there and just walk out of the room entirely. I got a letter last week. It came in a plain white envelope with no return address, forwarded from my parents' old house. Inside was a single page, typed, unsigned. Julia, your mother asked me not to contact you, but I'm writing anyway because someone needs to say this. You were right. I'm your father's brother, and I've watched your parents make bad financial decisions for decades. I've watched them live beyond their means, rack up debt, and then expect other people to bail them out. When I heard what happened at Christmas, I was ashamed. I should have said something then. I didn't. What Claire said was unforgivable. What the rest of us did, laughing along, saying nothing, was equally unforgivable. You deserved better from all of us. I know you'll probably never respond to this, and I don't blame you. But I wanted you to know that not everyone thinks you were wrong. Some of us are just too cowardly to say it out loud. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. Pete. I read it 3 times, then put it in the folder with the bank papers. I don't know if I'll ever respond. I don't know if it changes anything. But it's nice to know that someone finally saw me. Not as the charity case. Not as the scapegoat. Not as the villain. Just as a person who reached her limit and chose herself for once. That's all this ever was. A choice to stop carrying weight that was never mine to begin with. A choice to let other people face the consequences of their own actions. A choice to value myself as much as I valued them. And if that makes me cruel, if that makes me selfish, if that makes me the bad guy in their story, fine. I can live with that. What I couldn't live with was staying invisible forever, silent forever, small forever, just to make everyone else comfortable. That version of me was dying by inches. That version of me was already gone by the time I stood up from that Christmas table and walked out into the cold. This version, the one sitting here in the sunrise, drinking cheap coffee, planning a quiet weekend with no obligations and no one to save, this version is alive. And maybe that's enough. Maybe choosing yourself is always enough, even when everyone else tells you it isn't. Maybe especially then. My phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. This is Claire. I got a new phone. I'm sorry. Can we talk? I stare at it for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then I delete it and block the number. Some conversations are over before they begin. Some apologies come too late. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. I finish my coffee and get ready for work. Outside, the world is waking up, cars starting, people heading to jobs, the ordinary machinery of regular life grinding forward. My small life. My sad apartment. My unimpressive existence. Mine. All mine. And isn't that the point of everything? I lock my door behind me and head out into the morning, carrying nothing but my purse and my keys and the knowledge that I don't owe anyone anything anymore. Not even an explanation. Especially not that. 6 months after the house sale, I got promoted. It wasn't a huge promotion, senior bookkeeper to junior accountant, but it came with a raise and actual benefits and the kind of validation I hadn't realized I'd been starving for. My boss, Margaret, called me into her office on a Tuesday morning and told me she'd been watching my work, impressed by my attention to detail and reliability. "You're the person I can always count on," she said. "And I want to make sure you know that's valued here." I cried in the bathroom for 10 minutes after that meeting. Not sad crying, the other kind. The kind that comes when someone finally sees the effort you've been putting in, when being reliable is treated as a strength instead of an obligation. Jenny took me out for drinks that night to celebrate. We went to this little wine bar downtown, the kind of place I never would have gone to before because I was always saving money, always preparing for the next crisis, always making sure I had enough in reserve in case someone needed me. "You seem different," Jenny said halfway through her second glass of Chardonnay. "Lighter, somehow." "I cut off my family," I said. The wine had loosened my tongue. "Well, most of them. It's been 6 months." Her eyebrows went up. "All of them?" "Parents, siblings, most of the extended family. There was this thing at Christmas, and then I stopped helping them financially, and yeah. It's been quiet. Good quiet or bad quiet?" I thought about it. Both? Sometimes I miss having people to call. But then I remember what those calls were usually about, and I don't miss it anymore. Jenny nodded slowly. "My sister and I don't talk. Haven't for 3 years. She stole money from our mom's account when mom was in the hospital and blamed it on me. Family can be toxic. They really can. We clinked glasses to that. To toxic families and the courage to walk away from them. To choosing peace over obligation. That night, slightly tipsy and feeling bold, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went on a dating app. Nothing serious, I told myself. Just looking. Just seeing what was out there. His name was Michael. He was a high school history teacher, divorced, no kids. His profile picture showed him at a museum, laughing at something off camera. He looked normal. Nice. The kind of person who wouldn't demand I set myself on fire to keep him warm. We matched. He messaged first, "That's a great photo. Is that from the art museum downtown?" It was. I'd gone alone on a Saturday afternoon a few weeks earlier, something I never would have done before. Before, I would have been at my parents' house, fixing their budget or organizing their filing system or doing some other thankless task. We talked for 2 weeks before meeting for coffee. He was exactly like his pictures, kind smile, easy laugh, the kind of presence that made you feel comfortable immediately. We talked about work and books and the best pizza places in the city. Normal things. Easy things. "What about family?" he asked eventually. "Are you close with yours?" I hesitated. This was always going to be the hard question. "Not really," I said carefully. "We had a falling out. It's complicated." "I get that. My ex-wife's family was a nightmare. Sometimes distance is healthier." The relief I felt at that simple statement, no pushing, no judgment, no insistence that family is everything and I should try harder, was overwhelming. We saw each other again. And again. By July, we were officially dating. By August, he'd met Jenny and my coworkers and I'd met his friends from the gym. Normal relationship progression. No drama. No demands. "You're happy," Jenny observed one day at lunch. "It's weird seeing you happy." Was I that miserable before? "You were stressed. All the time. Like you were waiting for something bad to happen." She wasn't wrong. For 3 years, I'd lived with this constant low-level anxiety, always wondering if my parents were making their payments, always worried that my phone would ring with another crisis. Even before the co-signing, I'd been the family's crisis manager, the one who solved problems and absorbed stress. Now the phone didn't ring. And I wasn't waiting for disaster anymore. In September, I ran into Daniel at the grocery store. I saw him first, standing in the produce section with his wife, Sarah. They were arguing about something. I could see it in their body language, the tight way she was holding herself, the frustrated gestures he was making. For a moment, I considered turning around and leaving. But something stubborn in me refused to hide. I pushed my cart forward. Daniel saw me. His whole body went rigid. Sarah looked up, followed his gaze, and her expression shifted into something complicated. We'd always gotten along, Sarah and I. She'd never been part of the Christmas dinner cruelty. "Julia," Daniel said. Just my name, like a statement. "Daniel." "Sarah." I nodded at her. "How are the twins?" "Good. They're good." Sarah's voice was cautious. "Starting preschool next month." "That's great." Silence. Awkward and thick. Daniel was staring at me like he was seeing a ghost. "You look good," Sarah said finally. "Really good." "Thanks. I'm doing well." More silence. I could leave. I should leave. But that stubborn part of me wanted to see what Daniel would do, if he'd apologize, if he'd acknowledge anything. He didn't. "We should go," he said to Sarah. "We're already late." They left. Sarah glanced back once, and I saw something in her expression: sympathy? Regret? I couldn't tell. But Daniel never looked back at all. I finished my shopping and drove home, and realized something. I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel guilty or sad or like I'd made a mistake. I just felt nothing. Like running into an old acquaintance, someone I used to know but had no connection to anymore. The cord was really cut. October brought another surprise, a wedding invitation. It arrived in a cream-colored envelope with elegant calligraphy. Inside, an invitation to my cousin Amy's wedding. Amy, who I hadn't spoken to since Christmas, who had been at that dinner and said nothing while I was humiliated. The invitation was addressed only to me. No +1. I stared at it for a long time. Amy and I had been close as kids, before life and distance and family dynamics had pulled us apart. I'd always assumed I'd go to her wedding when it happened. I'd imagined being happy for her. Now I just felt tired. Michael found me on the couch, invitation in hand. "What's that?" "Wedding invitation. My cousin." "Are you going to go?" "I don't know. The last time I saw her, she watched her mother laugh at me and said nothing." He sat down beside me. "Do you want to go?" "Part of me does. Part of me wants to show up looking amazing and successful and prove that I'm not a charity case. But that's my ego talking, not my actual desire to celebrate her marriage." "Then don't go." "It's that simple? Isn't it?" He shrugged. "You don't owe anyone your presence, Julia. Not even for big events. Especially not if seeing them will hurt you." I looked at him, this kind, uncomplicated man who thought boundaries were normal and healthy instead of cruel and selfish. Who thought I deserved to protect my peace. "You're right," I said. I threw the invitation away. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Amy's mother, Aunt Linda. The same Aunt Linda who'd giggled at Christmas when Claire called me a charity case. "Julia, darling, we haven't received your RSVP. I'm not coming." Pause. "What do you mean you're not coming? It's Amy's wedding." "I'm aware. I'm still not coming." "But you have to come. You're family." That word again. Family. Like it was supposed to mean something, like it was supposed to override everything else. "Aunt Linda, the last time I saw the family, I was publicly humiliated. Nobody defended me. Nobody apologized. Now you want me to show up and pretend everything's fine? No. That was months ago. You can't still be upset about that." "I can, actually. And I am." Her voice hardened. "Amy will be devastated." Then Amy should have called me herself to apologize. But she didn't. None of you did. "So I'm not coming." "You're being incredibly selfish." "Yes, I agreed. I am. And I'm finally okay with that." I hung up while she was still talking. Michael was watching me from the kitchen doorway. "Feel good?" "Surprisingly, yes." "Want to get dinner?" "Absolutely." We went to our favorite Thai place and didn't talk about my family at all. We talked about his students and my new responsibilities at work and whether we should go hiking next weekend. Normal things. Good things. Later that night, lying in bed, Michael asked, "Do you ever regret it? Cutting them off?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "But then I remember how much lighter I feel now. How much quieter my life is. How I don't wake up anxious anymore, waiting for the next crisis." "You were anxious before?" "All the time. For years." He pulled me closer. "I'm glad you're not anymore." "Me too," I thought. "Me too." November came, and with it, an unexpected email. It was from Claire's husband, Brian. I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. "Julia, I'm writing without Claire's knowledge, so please don't mention this to her if she contacts you. I wanted you to know that I've been thinking a lot about what happened at Christmas, and I owe you an apology. I was there. I heard what Claire said. I laughed along with everyone else, and that was wrong. I've been married to your sister for 8 years, and in that time, I've watched her treat you like you're less than her. I've watched your parents enable it. I never said anything because it wasn't my place, or at least that's what I told myself. After you left, Claire laughed about it. She said you were being dramatic. Your mom agreed. I didn't. When the mortgage situation came out, Claire was furious with you. She called you vindictive and cruel. She said you were destroying your parents' lives over nothing. But I did some thinking, and I realized something. In all the years I've known your family, I've never once heard them acknowledge anything you've done for them. Not once. Claire mentioned once that you don't really contribute to family stuff, and when I pointed out that you'd spent the whole previous Thanksgiving cooking while she showed up late with nothing, she got mad at me. That's when I started noticing the pattern. I wanted you to know that not everyone in this family is blind to what happened. And I wanted you to know that if I could go back to Christmas, I would have said something. I would have defended you. I hope you're doing well. You deserve better than what this family gave you. Brian." I read it 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and sat in silence, processing. An apology. A real one. Not "I'm sorry you're upset" or "I'm sorry but you overreacted." Just "I was wrong, and I see you now." It didn't change anything. I wasn't going to reconcile with Claire or my parents or anyone else. But it mattered somehow, knowing that someone had witnessed it all and agreed that I wasn't crazy, wasn't cruel, wasn't wrong. I responded that evening, keeping it brief. "Brian, thank you for writing. I appreciate the apology, and I appreciate you taking the time to really look at the patterns. You're right, I spent years being invisible until they needed something, and I finally got tired of it. I'm doing well. I'm happy, actually. I hope you are too. Take care of yourself. Julia." I didn't hear back, and I didn't expect to. But that night, I slept easier. Thanksgiving approached, and for the first time in my adult life, I had no plans. No family dinner to attend. No potluck to contribute to. No spending the entire day in someone else's kitchen while people complained that the turkey was dry or the stuffing needed more salt. "What do you usually do for Thanksgiving?" Michael asked. "Used to go to my parents'. Big family thing. Lots of food, lots of people, lots of stress." "And this year?" "This year, I have no idea." He hesitated. "I'm going to my mom's. It's just her and my sister's family. Small, low-key. You're welcome to come, but no pressure. I know meeting the family is a big step. Meeting the family." The phrase that used to fill me with dread now just made me nervous in a normal way. Good nervous. First date nervous. "Are you sure? I don't want to intrude. My mom asked me to invite you. She's been wanting to meet you." "Okay," I said. "Yeah. I'd like that." Thanksgiving at Michael's mother's house was nothing like Thanksgiving with my family. There were 7 of us total: Michael's mom, Carol, his sister Jennifer, Jennifer's husband Tom, their 2 kids, Michael, and me. The house was smaller, the table was smaller, everything was smaller and somehow better for it. Carol hugged me when we arrived. "Julia, Michael talks about you constantly. I'm so glad you're here." The kids, 6 and 8, were loud and energetic but sweet. Jennifer was funny and welcoming. Tom told bad jokes that made everyone groan. The food was good but not perfect, and nobody cared. At one point, Carol asked about my family, and I gave her the abbreviated version. "We're not close. We had a falling out." She nodded, didn't push. "Well, you're welcome here anytime. Any friend of Michael's is family to us." I had to excuse myself to the bathroom after that, where I cried quietly for 5 minutes. Not sad crying. The other kind. The kind that comes when someone offers you warmth without strings attached. When I came back, Michael gave me a knowing look but didn't say anything. He just reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. After dinner, helping Jennifer with dishes, she said, "I hope my mom didn't make you uncomfortable with the family comment." "No, it was really nice, actually. Michael told me a little about your situation. Not details, just that things with your family are complicated." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I'm better off. She studied me for a moment. You seem happy. Michael seems happy. That's what matters. Later, driving home, Michael said, you survived your first Turner family holiday. They're wonderful. Your mom is wonderful. She liked you. Jennifer texted me that you're a keeper. Oh? He glanced over at me, smiling. I agree with her. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is your mother. I hope you're having a nice Thanksgiving. We miss you. I stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it. Everything okay? Michael asked. Yeah, I said. Everything's fine. And it was. December arrived, and with it, the anniversary of that Christmas dinner. 1 year since everything had changed. I marked the date in my head but didn't dwell on it. I was too busy living my actual life, my job, my relationship, my quiet apartment that wasn't sad at all, my old car that got me where I needed to go just fine. Jenny and I had lunch on December 20th, our last one before the holidays. She was going to visit her dad in Florida. I was spending Christmas with Michael and his family. A year ago, you were a different person, Jenny observed. You know that, right? Was I that bad? Not bad. Just weighed down. Like you were carrying something heavy that nobody else could see. I was. And now? Now I'm not. I smiled. Now I'm just me. Julia. Not anybody's safety net or punching bag or invisible helper. Just me. It looks good on you. That evening, I got a letter. Real mail, forwarded from my parents' old address again. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note from my father. Julia, this is your share of what was left after we sold the house and paid off everything. I know it's not much, but it's rightfully yours. I won't ask you to forgive us or to come back. I know we failed you. Your mother and I have been in counseling, trying to understand how we let things get so bad. How we let Claire treat you that way. How we took your help for granted. I can't undo the past. I can't take back that dinner or the years before it. But I want you to know that we see it now. We see what we did. We see what we lost. I hope you're happy. I hope you're at peace. I'm sorry. Dad. I held the check in one hand and the letter in the other, feeling nothing and everything at once. An apology. Money. An acknowledgement of guilt. Was it enough? Would anything ever be enough? I didn't know. Maybe it didn't matter. I deposited the check and put the letter in the folder with Uncle Pete's and Brian's messages. Evidence that not everyone was blind. Evidence that some people could grow, could change, could finally see what they'd done. But I didn't call. Didn't write back. Didn't reopen that door. Some things, once broken, stay broken. And that's okay. Christmas Eve, Michael's apartment. We were exchanging gifts before going to his mom's the next day. He'd gotten me a beautiful journal and a gift certificate to that wine bar Jenny and I loved. I'd gotten him a first edition of his favorite historical biography and a subscription to some history podcast he'd mentioned wanting. This is perfect, he said, turning the book over in his hands. How did you even find this? I have my ways. He pulled out one more box, small and wrapped in silver paper. One more thing. Inside was a key. It's to my place, he said, suddenly nervous. I know it's fast, and I'm not asking you to move in or anything. But I want you to have it. I want you to feel like you can come here anytime. Like this is your space too, if you want it to be. I looked at the key, then at him. This man who'd never asked me to be anything but myself. Who thought my boundaries were healthy and my choices were valid. Who introduced me to his family and made me feel welcome without any strings attached. Thank you, I said. This means a lot. You mean a lot. We kissed, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Christmas Day at Carol's house. The same warmth, the same laughter, the same feeling of being included without having to earn it. The kids opened presents with explosive joy. Jennifer and Tom bickered affectionately about whose turn it was to carve the ham. Carol asked me to help with the appetizers and actually thanked me when I did. At dinner, Carol raised her glass. I want to make a toast. To family, the one we're born with and the one we choose. And to new additions who make everything brighter. She looked at me when she said it. Everyone clinked glasses. Michael squeezed my hand under the table. Jennifer smiled at me across the table. And I realized something. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Not obligation and guilt and invisible labor. Not mockery and judgment and conditional love. Just warmth. Acceptance. Choice. My phone stayed silent all day. No calls from my mother. No texts from Claire. No messages from anyone in the Hartley family. And I was okay with that. Better than okay. I was free. Later that night, Michael and I sat on his couch, full and tired and content. He was scrolling through photos from the day. I was just sitting, thinking. You're quiet, he observed. Just thinking about last Christmas. How different everything was. Better now? So much better. Last year, I left my family's house in tears. This year, I had the best Christmas I've ever had. Good. He set his phone down. You deserve every good thing, Julia. I hope you know that. I'm starting to. It was true. For the first time in my life, I was starting to believe that I deserved happiness, deserved peace, deserved to be treated well. That I didn't have to earn love through sacrifice. That being enough meant just being me. My phone buzzed. Despite myself, I looked. A text from an unknown number. Hi Julia, this is Sarah, Daniel's wife. I just wanted to say that I think about you often and I hope you're doing well. What happened at Christmas last year was wrong, and I'm sorry I didn't say something. I understand if you don't want to respond. I just wanted you to know that not everyone in the family agreed with how you were treated. Merry Christmas. I showed Michael. Are you going to respond? I thought about it. Sarah had always been kind to me. She'd been caught in the middle, married to my brother but not part of the original cruelty. I typed back, thank you, Sarah. That means a lot. I'm doing really well. I hope you and the twins are good. Merry Christmas. Short, polite, but not an invitation to reconnect. Just an acknowledgement. A closing of a loop. She responded immediately, I'm glad you're well. Take care of yourself. And that was that. How do you feel? Michael asked. Good. It's nice that she reached out. But it doesn't change anything. I'm not going back. You don't have to explain that to me. I know. But I'm explaining it to myself. Making sure I'm certain. And are you? I looked around Michael's apartment, my space too, now, with the key he'd given me. I thought about Jenny and Carol and Jennifer. I thought about my promotion and my quiet life and my peace. Yeah, I said. I'm certain. New Year's Eve, Michael and I went to a small party at Jenny's apartment. Nothing fancy, just friends and good food and countdown to midnight. At 11:59, everyone gathered around Jenny's TV to watch the ball drop in Times Square. Michael pulled me close. Jenny caught my eye and grinned. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. A year ago, I'd been invisible. A year ago, I'd been a charity case. 7, 6, 5. A year ago, I'd been breaking. A year ago, I'd been done. 4, 3, 2. And now? Now I was free. 1. Happy New Year. Michael kissed me. Jenny hugged us both. Someone popped champagne. My phone stayed silent. No messages from my family. No last-minute attempts at reconciliation or manipulation. Just silence. Just peace. Just me, choosing myself, over and over again. And that was enough. That was everything. Story 3.
At my cousin's wedding, during the speeches, my aunt took the mic. Some people marry for love, some for money. My niece here? She pointed at me. She married for. Well, we're still trying to figure that out. He's broke, uneducated, and, she laughed, let's just say the gene pool could have been deeper for those kids. The room erupted in laughter. My husband's hand trembled in mine. I stood up, took my children's hands, and said clearly, you know what's deeper than a gene pool? The hole you've all just dug yourselves into. Enjoy the reception. At the parking lot, my phone buzzed. My aunt, don't be dramatic. It's just a joke. BTW, you're still the emergency contact for my mortgage, right? I hung up and blocked her. I need to tell you something, and you're probably not going to believe me at first. But I swear on everything I love, this is exactly how it happened. My aunt humiliated my husband and children in front of 200 people at a wedding, and what she didn't know was that I'd been waiting for this moment for 3 years. Not hoping for it, exactly, but preparing for it. Because when you grow up in a family like mine, you learn to keep receipts. Let me back up. The day started normal enough. Well, normal for a family wedding where half the guests are related to you and the other half are strangers who married into this circus. My cousin Bethany, my Aunt Patricia's daughter, was getting married to some finance guy named Derek who wore his watch too tight and called everyone chief. The venue was one of those restored barns that cost more than an actual house, with string lights and mason jars full of wildflowers that probably died the second they were cut. I should mention that my Aunt Patricia is the kind of woman who measures her worth by the price tag she can drop in conversation. You know the type. She'll tell you what her purse costs before she tells you her daughter's getting married. She's my mother's older sister, and she spent the last 40 years making sure everyone knows she married better, lives better, and raised her children better than anyone else in the family. My husband Marcus and I arrived with our 2 kids, Emma and Jack, who were 7 and 5 at the time. Emma wore a blue dress with a white collar that she'd picked out herself, and Jack had on a little button-down shirt that he kept trying to untuck because he said it made him feel too fancy. They're good kids. Smart, kind, funny in that weird way children are funny when they don't know they're being funny. Marcus held my hand as we walked in, and I could feel the slight tension in his grip. He always gets quiet around my family. Not uncomfortable, exactly, just watchful. Like he's waiting for the other shoe to drop. We found our seats at table 7, which was close enough to the family tables to be insulting but far enough to make a point. My mother was at table 3. My Aunt Patricia, mother of the bride, was at table 1, naturally. She caught my eye as we sat down and gave me this tight little smile that didn't reach her eyes. The kind of smile that says, "I'm so glad you could make it, even though I'm not." The ceremony was fine. Bethany cried, Derek cried, the officiant made a joke about love and laughter that got polite chuckles. Standard wedding stuff. It was during the reception, after dinner, when things got interesting. The speeches started predictably. Best man told a story about Derek in college that probably should have stayed in college. Maid of honor cried through 5 minutes about how Bethany was her person, her rock, her soulmate in friendship form. Then Patricia took the microphone. She looked radiant up there, I'll give her that. Hair done, makeup perfect, wearing a champagne-colored dress that probably cost more than my car payment. She thanked everyone for coming, talked about how proud she was of Bethany, how Derek was the son she never had. Then her eyes landed on me. "You know," she said, her voice carrying across the silent room, "weddings always make me think about love and marriage and what brings people together." She paused, took a sip of champagne. "Some people marry for love. Some for money. Some for security." I felt Marcus shift beside me. Emma was playing with her napkin, folding it into shapes. Jack was stealing mints from the centerpiece. "My niece here," Patricia continued, and she actually pointed at me. Pointed? Like I was an exhibit at a museum. "She married for. Well, we're still trying to figure that out." A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. My mother's face went pale. I could see her across the room, frozen with her wine glass halfway to her lips. "He's broke," Patricia said, like she was sharing a fun fact about the weather. "Uneducated. Works with his hands, bless his heart." More laughter now, louder. People were looking at us. Marcus's jaw tightened. His hand in mine had gone completely still. "And let's just say," Patricia continued, building to her punchline, "the gene pool could have been deeper for those kids." The room erupted. Not everyone, but enough. Enough people laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Enough people looked at my children, my beautiful, brilliant children, and laughed. Emma's head came up. She was old enough to understand something was wrong, even if she didn't quite get what. Jack just looked confused, sticky fingers paused halfway to his mouth with another mint. Marcus's hand was trembling in mine. Not shaking, but trembling. The kind of movement that comes from trying very, very hard to stay still. I stood up. The laughter died down as people noticed me rising. Patricia was still at the microphone, flushed with her success, smiling like she'd just won something. I took Emma's hand. Then Jack's. They stood up with me, my little ducklings, following my lead without question the way children do when they trust you completely. "You know what's deeper than a gene pool?" I said. My voice was calm. Steady. The room had gone completely silent now. The hole you've all just dug yourselves into. I looked at Patricia. Looked at my mother. Looked at Bethany, who had the grace to appear mortified. Looked at all the faces that had laughed at my family. "Enjoy the reception," I said. And then we left. The walk to the parking lot felt like it took hours and seconds simultaneously. Emma was crying quietly, and I realized she'd understood more than I thought. Jack was asking questions. Why did Aunt Patricia say those things? Why were people laughing? Are we not going to have cake? Marcus was silent. He helped me buckle the kids into their car seats, his movements careful and precise the way they get when he's hurt and trying not to show it. My phone buzzed as I was closing Jack's door. A text from Patricia. "Don't be dramatic. It's just a joke. BTW, you're still the emergency contact for my mortgage, right?" I stared at that message for a long moment. Read it twice. Then I hung up. She was calling now, probably to tell me I was overreacting, and blocked her number. But here's the thing, and this is why I needed to tell you this story, Patricia wasn't wrong about Marcus. Not in the facts, anyway. Just in what those facts meant. Marcus is broke by her standards. He's a carpenter. He builds custom furniture and repairs old houses and comes home with sawdust in his hair and calluses on his hands. He didn't go to college. He went to trade school and then apprenticed under his uncle for 5 years, learning the kind of craftsmanship that you can't get from a textbook. We met when I was in graduate school, drowning in student loans and working 3 jobs to stay afloat. I was waitressing at this little diner near campus, and he came in every morning for black coffee and wheat toast. Always left a good tip. Always said please and thank you to everyone, from the manager to the dishwasher. One morning my car wouldn't start, and he was in the parking lot. He offered to look at it, found the problem in 10 minutes, fixed it in 20. Wouldn't let me pay him. Just smiled and said, "Buy me dinner sometime." I did. And then he bought me dinner. And then we bought each other dinner. And somewhere in all those dinners, I realized I was falling in love with someone who made me laugh, who listened when I talked, who didn't care that I had debt and anxiety in a family that measured worth in dollar signs. Patricia had never approved. From the moment I brought Marcus to a family dinner, she'd made her opinions clear. Not to my face, never directly, but in those comments that are designed to sound like concern. Are you sure this is what you want? Have you thought about the long term? What about when you have children? When I got pregnant with Emma, Patricia actually pulled me aside at Christmas and asked if I considered other options. When I told her Marcus and I were getting married, she suggested I might want to wait a bit longer, just to be sure. But the mortgage thing. That's the part you need to understand. 3 years ago, Patricia was buying a new house. A massive thing with 5 bedrooms and a pool and a guest house that was bigger than my entire home. She needed someone to co-sign the mortgage, something about her credit, some complication with Derek's business partner being involved. I never got the full story. She needed someone with good credit at steady income who'd agree to be the emergency contact. She asked me. Specifically me. Came over to my house with a bottle of wine and a folder full of paperwork and this whole speech about family and how we needed to support each other. Marcus told me not to do it. That's a lot of liability, he said. If something goes wrong, you're on the hook for $1 million mortgage. But she was family. My mother's sister. And she promised it was just a formality, just a technicality, nothing would ever actually come of it. I signed, and for 3 years, everything was fine. Patricia made her payments. I never heard a word about it. The whole thing faded into the background of my life, just another piece of paperwork filed away in the drawer with birth certificates and insurance policies. Until 2 months before Bethany's wedding. I was at work when I got the call from the bank. There'd been missed payments. 3 months of missed payments. As the emergency contact and co-signer, they wanted to know if I was aware of the situation. I called Patricia immediately. She didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. I sent texts. Emailed. Finally drove to her house. She was home. Her car was in the driveway, lights on inside. But she wouldn't answer the door. I found out later, through my mother, that Patricia and her husband Richard had made some bad investments. Lost a lot of money. They were scrambling to cover it, selling things, taking loans. The house payment had fallen through the cracks. I panicked. My credit was at risk. More than that, I could be held liable for payments I couldn't afford. I had my own mortgage, my own bills, 2 kids who needed things like food and shoes and field trip money. I called a lawyer. A real estate attorney my friend recommended. Explained the situation. He reviewed the paperwork I'd signed and went very, very quiet. "This is worse than you think," he said finally. "The way this is structured, you're not just an emergency contact. You're a co-borrower. If they default, the bank comes after you first because your credit is better. And there are some clauses here about personal property and asset seizure that are unusual." I felt my stomach drop. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said carefully, "that if this goes south, they could come after your house. Your savings. Anything in your name." I couldn't breathe. My house. The home Marcus and I had bought, that we poured everything into, that held all our memories of Emma's first steps and Jack's first words and 1,000 ordinary moments that made up our life. The lawyer helped me file paperwork. Emergency petitions. Documentation of the situation. It was complex and terrifying and expensive. I drained our emergency fund paying for legal help. And through all of it, Patricia wouldn't talk to me. Wouldn't answer my calls or texts. Sent messages through my mother saying I was overreacting and making a big deal out of nothing. 2 weeks before the wedding, my lawyer called with news. He'd found something in the paperwork, some clause that Patricia's lawyer had included that actually worked in my favor. Combined with the documentation of missed payments and her refusal to communicate, we might be able to get me removed from the mortgage. But it would require Patricia's cooperation, and it would probably trigger some financial scrutiny that she wouldn't appreciate. I sent her one more message. Clear and simple, we need to talk about the mortgage situation. My lawyer says we can resolve this, but I need you to contact me. No response. The wedding invitation was already on my fridge. I'd RSVP'd months ago, bought a gift, arranged for Marcus to take time off work. Part of me wanted to skip it. Stay home. Avoid the whole family circus. But Marcus said we should go. Don't let her drive you into hiding, he said. She's the one who should be embarrassed, not you. So we went. And honestly, I'd hoped Patricia would pull me aside at some point. Maybe after the ceremony, before dinner. That we could step into a quiet corner and talk like adults about the situation. Figure something out. Instead, she took a microphone and mocked my family in front of 200 people. The drive home from the wedding was quiet. Emma fell asleep in her car seat. Jack played with a toy truck, making soft engine noises. Marcus stared out the window. I'm sorry, I said. He looked at me. What are you apologizing for? For her. For subjecting you to that. Stop. His voice was gentle but firm. You didn't do anything wrong. She did. When we got home, I put the kids to bed while Marcus made tea. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table he'd built from reclaimed wood when we first moved in, and I told him everything. The mortgage, the legal situation, all the details I'd been trying to protect him from. He listened. Didn't interrupt. When I finished, he took my hand. Whatever happens, he said, we'll figure it out together. That's what we do. I slept terribly that night. Kept waking up, checking my phone, expecting messages that didn't come. By morning, I'd unblocked Patricia's number, just to see if there was anything. Nothing. But there were messages from other people. My mother. 2 of my cousins. A couple of family friends. They all said variations of the same thing. Patricia had been drinking, it was a joke that went too far, I was overreacting by leaving, I'd embarrassed the family. I didn't respond to any of them. Monday morning, I called my lawyer. Told him what happened at the wedding. Asked if we could move forward with the legal options he'd mentioned, even without Patricia's cooperation. It'll be harder, he said. But after what she did, if you wanted to pursue damages for emotional distress on top of the mortgage situation, you might have a case. I didn't want damages. I just wanted out. Wanted my name off that mortgage, my family protected, this whole nightmare behind me. We filed the paperwork that week. The interesting thing about legal documents is that they have to be served in person. Which means someone has to physically hand them to you. Patricia couldn't ignore a process server the way she ignored my calls. She got the papers on Thursday. Called me within an hour, screaming. How dare I after everything she'd done for me? I was ungrateful, vindictive, trying to ruin her life. I let her yell. When she finally ran out of steam, I spoke. You had 3 months to talk to me about this, I said. 3 months of missed payments that put my family at risk. And instead of addressing it, you humiliated my husband and children at a wedding. I'm done protecting you from the consequences of your choices. This is about the joke? She sounded genuinely shocked. You're doing this because of a joke? This is about you using me as a financial safety net and then treating my family like garbage. This is about you thinking you can do whatever you want because we're family and I'll just take it. I'm done taking it. She hung up. Called back 5 minutes later, calmer. What do you want? I want my name off the mortgage. I want written confirmation that I have no liability for your property. And I want it done by the end of the month. That's impossible. The bank won't. Then you'll need to refinance. Or sell. Or figure something else out. But I'm not going to risk losing my house because you can't manage your finances. There was a long silence. Then, if I do this, we're done. You understand that? The family will. The family laughed when you insulted my children, I said. So I guess we're already done. I hung up. My mother called next. Begged me to reconsider. Patricia was family, she was going through a hard time, couldn't I find it in my heart to forgive? Did she apologize? I asked. She's proud, my mother said. You know how she is. That's not an answer. My mother sighed. She's my sister. You're my daughter. I'm trying to keep this family together. She's the one who broke it, I said. I'm just refusing to pretend it's not broken. The next 2 weeks were tense. My lawyer and Patricia's lawyer exchanged documents. There were phone calls, negotiations, threats of countersuits that went nowhere. Patricia tried to get other family members involved, to pressure me into backing down. My uncle called. 2 cousins. My mother again and again. I blocked most of them. The ones I didn't block, I gave the same message, talk to my lawyer. Marcus held steady through all of it. Came home every day with sawdust in his hair and kissed me hello and asked about my day. Helped Emma with her homework. Built Jack a toy box shaped like a race car. Reminded me, just by being himself, why I'd fallen in love with him in the first place. 3 weeks after the wedding, my lawyer called with news. Patricia had agreed to terms. She was refinancing, removing me from the mortgage, signing documentation that released me from all liability. It would take a few weeks to finalize, but it was happening. She pushed back hard on one thing, he said. She wanted a non-disclosure agreement. Wanted you to sign something saying you wouldn't talk about the financial situation or the wedding incident. What did you say? I said no. You're not paying for her peace of mind. I could have cried. Thank you. There's one more thing, he said. In reviewing all the documents, we found some irregularities in the original mortgage paperwork. Things that might constitute fraud. I've reported it to the appropriate authorities. I can't tell you what will come of it, but thought you should know. I did cry then. Not from satisfaction or revenge, but from relief. It was almost over. The paperwork finalized in mid-September. My name came off the mortgage. My credit was protected. My lawyer sent me copies of everything, told me to keep them somewhere safe, wished me well. I took Marcus and the kids out for pizza that night. Nothing fancy, just our favorite place with the red checkered tablecloths and the guy who makes balloon animals for the kids. We ate too much and laughed too loud, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Emma asked if we were celebrating something special. Yes, I said. We're celebrating our family. Patricia didn't contact me again. Neither did most of that side of the family. My mother still called occasionally, still did conversations where we talked about the weather and avoided saying what we were both thinking. I was sad about that, in a distant sort of way. But also relieved. Here's what I learned: some people will only value you as long as you're useful to them. As long as you'll sign their papers and absorb their mockery and smile through their insults, because that's just how they are. And the moment you stop accepting that treatment, they'll tell you you're the problem. But I'd rather be the problem than the victim. 6 months after the wedding, Marcus and I were grocery shopping when we ran into Bethany. She was alone, looked tired, pushing a cart full of cleaning supplies. She saw us and froze. I could see her calculating whether to acknowledge us or pretend she hadn't noticed. Before she could decide, Emma called out, "Hi, Cousin Bethany." Children have no concept of social feuds. Emma had liked Bethany's dress at the wedding, and in her mind, that made them friends. Bethany's face crumpled a little. She came over slowly. "Hi, Emma," she said softly. Then, to me, "I'm sorry. For what my mother said. For not speaking up. I should have." I nodded. Didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't. But I appreciated the apology. "Things aren't great," Bethany continued. "With Mom and Dad. The house. There's been some investigation. Problems with the mortgage. They might have to sell." I felt a twinge of something. Not quite sympathy, but not satisfaction either. Just a dull acknowledgement of consequences. "I hope they figure it out," I said. Meant it, sort of. Bethany nodded. Started to walk away, then turned back. "Your family seems really happy. Your kids are great. Marcus seems like a good guy." "He is," I said. After she left, Marcus squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I thought about it. About everything that had happened, everything I'd lost and gained and learned. "Yeah," I said. "I really am." Because here's the truth that took me too long to understand: Patricia was right that Marcus doesn't have money or a degree. But what he does have is integrity, kindness, skill, and the kind of steady presence that makes a house feel like a home. He's teaching Emma woodworking, and she can already make a birdhouse that doesn't fall apart. He's teaching Jack to measure and cut and sand, and Jack takes such pride in his work that he shows everyone who visits. My children are growing up watching their father create beautiful things with his hands, watching their parents choose each other every single day, learning that worth isn't measured in paychecks or pedigrees. They're growing up knowing that standing up for yourself and the people you love isn't dramatic or overreacting. It's necessary. Last month, Emma came home from school upset. One of her classmates had made fun of her clothes, said they looked cheap. I asked her what she did. I told her my dad built our house, Emma said proudly. And my bookshelf and my desk and the swing in the backyard. And I asked her what her dad built. That's my girl. I think about that wedding sometimes. About the moment Patricia pointed at me and expected me to absorb the humiliation, to laugh along, to let it slide like I always had. About how surprised she looked when I stood up instead. The thing is, she'd been training me my whole life to sit down and take it. Every dismissive comment, every backhanded compliment, every reminder that I wasn't quite good enough, wasn't making the right choices, wasn't living up to the family standard, it was all designed to keep me in my place. But at some point, you get tired of staying in a place that makes you small. I won't pretend it's been easy. I've lost relationships with people I cared about. Family events happen without me now, and my mother sends careful photos that I know she's chosen specifically to avoid making me feel bad about not being there. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted. If I should have just laughed it off, gone back to the reception, eaten cake, and pretended everything was fine. Then I remember Marcus's hand trembling in mine. Emma's confused face. The sound of 200 people laughing at my family. And I know I made the right choice. My children will grow up knowing that some jokes aren't funny. That cruelty doesn't become acceptable just because someone smiles while delivering it. That you don't have to accept mistreatment from people just because you share DNA with them. They'll know that their father is one of the best men alive, even if he didn't go to college. That building things with your hands is honorable work. That love and respect matter more than money and status. And if Patricia ever tries to contact them when they're older, tries to build a relationship without going through me, they'll know enough to be cautious. To ask questions. To understand that family isn't a free pass to treat people badly. As for me, I'm building a different kind of life now. One where my worth isn't determined by my aunt's approval. Where my husband isn't judged by his bank account. Where my children are valued for who they are, not what someone thinks their genetics might be. It's quieter, this life. Smaller guest lists. More carefully chosen relationships. But it's also lighter somehow, like I've been carrying weight I didn't realize was there until I set it down. Marcus finished a project last week, a custom dining table for a client downtown. They paid him well, and he came home grinning, telling me about how they'd cried when they saw it because it was exactly what they'd imagined. You make people happy, I told him. So do you, he said. And maybe that's enough. Maybe building a good life with a good person and raising good kids is the best revenge there is. Not dramatic or flashy, but steady and true and completely immune to someone else's opinion about it. I still have Patricia's last text saved on my phone. The one I received in the parking lot, don't be dramatic. It's just a joke. BTW, you're still the emergency contact for my mortgage, right? I keep it as a reminder. Not of her cruelty, though that's there too. But of the moment I stopped making myself small to make someone else comfortable. Sometimes late at night, I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed at that reception. If I'd smiled and taken the joke and been the good niece everyone expected. Patricia would still have defaulted on her mortgage. My name would still be on those papers. I'd still be drowning in legal fees and anxiety, except I'd also have the memory of sitting there while people mocked my family and doing nothing about it. I made the right choice. Not the easy one, but the right one. And if Patricia ever tells the story from her side, if she paints me as vindictive or overdramatic or ungrateful, I hope whoever hears it asks the question nobody asked at that wedding: what kind of person humiliates a child's parents at a family celebration and expects no consequences? Because the answer to that question tells you everything you need to know. My family is safe now. My name is clear. My children are loved. My husband knows his worth, even if my aunt never will. And I know, deep in my bones, that protecting all of that was worth losing people who only valued me when I was useful. Last week, Jack asked me if we were ever going to see Aunt Patricia again. Maybe someday, I said honestly. But not anytime soon. That's okay, he said. I didn't really like her house anyway. It was too big and cold. Out of the mouths of children. Marcus and I are planning a vacation next summer. Nothing expensive, just a cabin by a lake where we can fish and hike and be together without anyone judging what we can or can't afford. Emma wants to bring her sketch pad. Jack wants to catch a fish bigger than his head. We'll go, the four of us, and we'll be happy. And somewhere in a house that's probably too big and too expensive and too empty, Patricia will be dealing with the consequences of her choices. That's not revenge. That's just life working the way it's supposed to. I don't hate her, is the strange thing. I'm not even angry anymore. Mostly I feel sorry for her, for being the kind of person who measures people by their income and their education and misses everything that actually matters. But I don't miss her. I don't miss the anxiety of wondering when the next insult will come. I don't miss second-guessing myself, wondering if I'm good enough by her standards. I don't miss watching Marcus try to prove himself to people who were never going to respect him anyway. What I have now is better. Smaller, quieter, but infinitely better. Emma is learning to build birdhouses. Jack is learning to measure twice and cut once. Marcus comes home every day and kisses me like he means it. And I wake up every morning in a house we actually own, free and clear, with no one's name on the mortgage but ours. That's worth more than an invitation to weddings where I'm the punchline. That's worth more than staying in good graces with people who never extended me any grace at all. That's worth everything. So if you're reading this and you're wondering whether to stand up for yourself, whether to set boundaries with family, whether to risk the fallout of saying no more, I can't tell you what to do. Every situation is different. Every family is complicated. But I can tell you this, the day I stood up at that wedding and took my children's hands and walked out, I stopped being the person my aunt wanted me to be and became the person my family needed me to be. And I've never regretted it for a single second. The hole we dug ourselves out of was deeper than any gene pool. And the view from up here is pretty good. But I need to tell you about what happened after. Because the story doesn't really end with me walking away feeling victorious. Real life is messier than that. About 4 months after the wedding, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Richard, Patricia's husband. My uncle by marriage. "I need to talk to you," he said. His voice sounded hollow, scraped out. "Not about the mortgage. About Patricia." My first instinct was to hang up. But curiosity won. "What about her?" "She's not doing well." He paused. I could hear him breathing, collecting himself. After everything with the house, the legal stuff, the investigation, she had a breakdown. A real one. She's been in treatment for 6 weeks. I sat down at the kitchen table. Marcus was in the garage with the kids, teaching them how to sandwood properly. I could hear their laughter through the walls. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. And I was, in a complicated way. "I'm not calling to make you feel guilty," Richard said quickly. "You had every right to do what you did. I should have stopped her from putting you in that situation in the first place. I should have stopped a lot of things." "Okay," I said, unsure where this was going. "The thing is," he continued, "the therapist wants her to make amends. Real ones. Face to face. And Patricia said she won't do it, that you'll just throw it back in her face. But I think she's scared. I think she knows she destroyed something she can't fix, and it's easier to pretend you're the villain than to admit she was wrong." I felt something twist in my chest. Not sympathy, exactly. More like recognition. Because I'd been scared too, scared of confronting what needed to be confronted until I had no choice. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Nothing," Richard said. "I just wanted you to know that she's struggling. That what she did at the wedding wasn't just cruelty, it was desperation. We were losing everything, and she couldn't control any of it, so she tried to control you. To make herself feel bigger by making you feel smaller. That doesn't excuse it." "No," he agreed. "It doesn't. But maybe it explains it." After we hung up, I sat there for a long time. Marcus came in eventually, flour on his shirt from the cookies they'd been making. "You okay?" he asked. I told him about the call. He listened, then pulled out the chair next to me and sat down. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. Part of me wants to ignore it. She made her choices. But another part of me wonders what it would take to fix it, Marcus finished. "Yeah." He was quiet for a moment. "You know what I think? I think you should do whatever helps you sleep at night. Not what makes her feel better or what the family expects. Whatever gives you peace." That night, I lay awake thinking about Patricia. About the aunt I'd known as a child, who'd taken me to museums and bought me books and told me I was smart. Before the competitiveness took over. Before everything became about status and money and being better than. I wondered when that shift had happened. When love became conditional on success. When family became a hierarchy instead of a haven. 2 weeks later, I sent Richard a message. Short and simple: "If Patricia wants to talk, I'm willing to listen. Once. On neutral ground. No other family members." We met at a coffee shop halfway between our houses. One of those generic places with too many menu options and music that's just loud enough to prevent eavesdropping. Patricia looked different. Older, somehow. Smaller. She'd lost weight, and not in a good way. Her clothes hung on her frame, and she wasn't wearing the carefully applied makeup I'd always associated with her. We sat across from each other, awkward and silent. She ordered a latte she didn't drink. I got black coffee I didn't want. "Thank you for coming," she said finally. I nodded. Didn't make it easy for her. "I'm supposed to apologize," she continued. "My therapist says I need to take accountability. But I don't know where to start because everything I want to say sounds like an excuse." "So don't make excuses," I said. "Just tell me the truth." She looked down at her cup, tracing the rim with one finger. "I was jealous of you." That surprised me. "Jealous? Of what?" "Of everything." Her voice cracked slightly. "You seemed so happy. You and Marcus and the kids. You didn't have money or status or any of the things I thought mattered, but you had this contentment. This peace. And I didn't. So you tried to destroy it." "No." "Yes." "I don't know." She looked up at me, and her eyes were red. "I wanted you to feel as small as I felt. Richard and I were drowning financially. Bethany's wedding cost more than we could afford, but I couldn't admit that. I couldn't let anyone see that we were failing. So I took it out on you because you were an easy target." "My children weren't targets," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "They were 7 and 5. "I know." She wiped at her eyes. "I know, and I'm so sorry. That's the part that haunts me. Not the financial stuff or the legal consequences, but the look on Emma's face when people laughed. I did that. I hurt a child to make myself feel powerful for 30 seconds. We sat in silence. Around us, people ordered drinks and chatted about their days, oblivious to the wreckage being sorted through at our table. "I can't fix this," Patricia said finally. "I know that. I can apologize, but I can't undo what I did. And I know you don't trust me anymore, and you shouldn't. But I wanted you to hear it from me, not through Richard or your mother. I was wrong. Completely, inexcusably wrong." I took a sip of coffee. It was too bitter, but I swallowed it anyway. "You were also wrong about Marcus." She nodded. "I know." "No, I don't think you do." I leaned forward. "You judged him based on his bank account and his education, and you missed everything that actually matters. He's kind. He's patient. He's teaching our children to build things with their hands and to treat people with respect. He comes home every day and asks about my day and actually listens to the answer. He's a better person than most of the people in our family, and you couldn't see it because you were too busy keeping score." "You're right," she said quietly. "And you know what the worst part is? I spent years trying to prove to you that I'd made the right choice. That my life was good enough by your standards. I let you make me feel small, over and over, because I wanted your approval. And at that wedding, I finally realized your approval wasn't worth having." Patricia flinched like I'd hit her. "I understand if you hate me." "I don't hate you," I said, and I was surprised to realize it was true. "I pity you. Because you're so focused on looking successful that you forgot how to be happy. And now you've lost both." She started crying then. Not delicate, pretty crying, but the ugly, gasping kind that comes from somewhere deep. People were starting to stare. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry." I didn't comfort her. Didn't reach across the table or tell her it was okay. Because it wasn't okay, and I wasn't responsible for making her feel better about the consequences of her actions. But I didn't leave, either. I sat there and let her cry, and when she finally composed herself, I said, "I accept your apology. But that doesn't mean I'm ready to have you in my life again. That's going to take time. Maybe a lot of time. Maybe never." "I understand," she whispered. "And if you ever want a relationship with my children, you'll have to earn that separately. Because they deserve better than someone who'll turn on them the moment they're convenient ammunition." She nodded, mascara streaking down her face despite her attempt to wipe it away. We sat there a few minutes longer, then I stood up. "I hope you get better. I really do. But I need you to understand that getting better doesn't entitle you to forgiveness. You hurt my family. That's not something I can just move past because you're in therapy." "I know," she said. I left her there with her untouched latte and her tears, and when I got to my car, I called Marcus. "How did it go?" he asked. "It went," I said. "I'll tell you about it when I get home." "I love you," he said. I love you too. The thing about closure is that it's never as clean as you want it to be. I'd expected to feel satisfied after confronting Patricia, like I'd won something. Instead, I just felt tired. Sad for what our relationship used to be, relieved that it was over, uncertain about what came next. My mother called a few days later. Richard told me you met with Patricia. I did. And? And nothing, Mom. She apologized. I listened. That's all. Does this mean you'll come to Christmas? She asked hopefully. No, I said firmly. Mom, I love you. But I'm not going to put my family in a situation where we're expected to pretend everything is fine. Patricia apologized, and that's good. But it doesn't erase what happened, and it doesn't mean we're going back to how things were. We're family, my mother said, and I could hear the tears in her voice. Family shouldn't have to come at the cost of my dignity, I replied. I'm not punishing Patricia. I'm protecting myself and my children. There's a difference. She didn't call again for 3 weeks. When she did, it was brief and careful. She asked about the kids, about Marcus's work, about nothing that mattered. We were both performing normalcy, pretending we weren't standing on opposite sides of a chasm neither of us knew how to cross. Life went on, the way life does. Emma turned 8 and asked for a telescope. Jack started first grade and came home every day with stories about his new friends. Marcus finished a project for a client who owned an art gallery, and they commissioned 3 more pieces. We built routines that didn't include Patricia or her side of the family. Birthday parties with just us. Holidays at home. Weekends at the park or the library or the hardware store, where Jack liked to look at all the different kinds of screws. It was smaller, this life. But it fit us better. 6 months after the coffee shop meeting, Bethany called me. I'm getting divorced, she said without preamble. I'm sorry, I said automatically. Don't be, she laughed, but it was bitter. Derek turned out to be exactly the kind of person he seemed like at the wedding. All show, no substance. We spent money we didn't have to impress people we didn't like, and when things got hard, he bailed. That's rough. Yeah, she sighed. Look, I'm calling because I wanted to apologize. Again. More specifically. I've been thinking a lot about that wedding, about what Mom said and what I didn't say. And I realized I was just as bad. I stood there and let her humiliate you because I didn't want to cause a scene at my wedding. I chose a perfect day over basic decency. You were in a difficult position, I said, though we both knew it was generous. So were you. But you stood up anyway. She paused. I want to do better. I want to be the kind of person who stands up. Can we get coffee sometime? Just us? We did. And then we did again. Slowly, carefully, Bethany and I rebuilt something that resembled a relationship. Not what we'd had before, that was gone, but something new. Something honest. She told me about Derek, about the financial pressure, about her own realizations about what mattered. I told her about the legal battle, about the fear of losing our house, about learning to set boundaries. Mom asks about you sometimes, Bethany said one afternoon. We were at a park, watching Emma and Jack play on the swings. What do you tell her? The truth. That you're doing well. That your kids are great. That Marcus is a good guy. She smiled slightly. She doesn't like hearing it, but she needs to. How is she? I asked, not sure if I wanted the answer. Better. Worse. Different. Bethany shrugged. She's in therapy still. Working through a lot of stuff. But she's also still Mom, you know? Still worried about what people think. Still trying to control narratives. I don't know if people really change, or if they just learn to manage their worst impulses better. I thought about that a lot afterward. About whether Patricia would ever truly understand what she'd done, or if she just learned to apologize better. About whether it mattered, as long as she stayed away from my family. A year after the wedding, Marcus and I were lying in bed when he said, I'm proud of you. For what? For all of it. For standing up at the wedding. For fighting for our house. For setting boundaries with your family. For not apologizing for choosing me. I rolled toward him. I'll always choose you. I know, he said. But it costs you something. And I don't want you to regret it. I don't, I said firmly. Not even a little bit. He kissed my forehead. Good. Because I don't regret you either. 2 years after the wedding, on a random Tuesday, Patricia sent me a letter. An actual, physical letter in the mail, written in her careful cursive on cream-colored stationery. I almost threw it away without opening it. But curiosity won again. The letter was short. No excuses, no justifications. Just a simple acknowledgement: I know I can't fix what I broke. But I want you to know I'm trying to be better. Not for you or to win you back, but because I finally understand that the person I was is not someone I'm proud of. Your children deserved better from me. Marcus deserved better. You deserved better. I'm sorry I couldn't see that until it was too late. I hope your family is well. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. Patricia. I showed it to Marcus. He read it twice, then handed it back. What do you think? I think it's too late for grand gestures, I said. But maybe it's not too late for her to become a better person. For herself, at least. Are you going to respond? I thought about it. Then I took out a piece of paper and wrote, "Thank you for the letter. I hope you find peace. Take care of yourself." I didn't sign it with love. Didn't leave the door open for reconciliation. Just acknowledged her words and moved on. Because that's what healing looks like sometimes. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but acknowledgement. Recognition that pain existed, that it mattered, that it changed things permanently. Emma is 10 now. Jack is 8. They're good kids, growing into themselves in ways that amaze me daily. Emma wants to be an architect. Jack wants to be a chef. Neither of them remembers much about the wedding anymore, just vague impressions of a fancy party where mommy got upset. I'm glad they don't remember. Glad they're growing up in a home where they don't have to worry about being good enough or measuring up to someone else's standards. Where their father's work is respected, their mother's choices are supported, and family means something real instead of performative. Marcus still comes home with sawdust in his hair. Still builds beautiful things that people cry over. Still makes me laugh and holds my hand and reminds me why I fell in love with him. And me? I'm still learning. Learning that boundaries aren't cruel, they're necessary. Learning that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's survival. Learning that sometimes the family you build matters more than the family you're born into. The hole I was talking about at the beginning, the one deeper than any gene pool, we're still climbing out of it, in some ways. There are days when I miss my family, miss the idea of what we could have been if things were different. Days when I wonder if I should have tried harder, compromised more, found a way to make it work. But then I look at my children, confident and kind and unafraid to be themselves. I look at my husband, building a business on integrity and skill. I look at the life we've created, messy and imperfect but wholly ours. And I know I made the right choice. The view from up here is pretty good. And it's getting better every day.
Story 4.
Don't get married before your sister. My mother warned. She's older, it would embarrass the family. I postponed my engagement twice while they threw my sister 3 expensive engagement parties that fell through. Finally, she got married, a $200,000 wedding my parents funded. When I got engaged 6 months later, they said, "We spent everything on your sister, you'll have to pay for yours." I had a small courthouse wedding. They didn't come. Years later, my sister's husband cheated and she filed for divorce. My parents called me sobbing, "She needs to stay with you while the divorce finalizes." "You have the bigger house," I said. "What about her asking me to be her maid of honor, then uninviting me because I'd look better in photos?" My father exploded, "That was years ago. Stop being petty, she's losing everything." I paused. Then I told them something that made my mother start crying on the phone. "I'm going to tell you something that still makes my hands shake when I think about it, and I need you to understand, I'm not the villain here. I know how this is going to sound. I know you're going to read certain parts and think I'm cruel, or petty, or that I should have been the bigger person. But just hear me out. Because what happened on that phone call with my parents didn't come from nowhere. It came from 28 years of being the spare daughter, the one who was supposed to wait her turn, stay quiet, and make everyone else comfortable. My mother said it to me 3 times before it finally stuck: "Don't get married before your sister." The first time, I laughed. I actually laughed, because I thought she was joking. I was 24, James had just proposed on a beach in Croatia, and I came home with my hand out, grinning like an idiot, expecting champagne and tears of joy. Instead, my mother took one look at the ring, pressed her lips together, and said, "That's lovely, sweetheart. But you know Danielle is older. It would embarrass the family if you married first." I stood there in their kitchen, salt still in my hair from the Adriatic, and watched my father nod along like this was perfectly reasonable. Like I'd just suggested wearing white to someone else's wedding. "We're not asking you to break up with him," my mother continued, her voice taking on that sweet, reasonable tone that made me feel like I was the crazy one for being upset. "Just wait a little. Give your sister time. She's been with Marcus for 2 years now. I'm sure he'll propose soon. Danielle was 26 then. She'd been dating Marcus for exactly 14 months, not 2 years, but I didn't correct my mother. I learned early that facts don't matter in my family. Feelings do. Specifically, Danielle's feelings. So I waited. James didn't understand at first. What do you mean, we can't set a date? We're engaged. That's literally what you do when you're engaged. How do you explain to your fiancé that your family operates on rules that don't make sense to anyone outside of it? That your older sister has always been the sun, and you've always been the moon, only visible when she's not around? I tried. I told him it was cultural, which wasn't entirely a lie. Our parents are Lebanese, and there are traditions about birth order, about respect. But mostly it was just Danielle. It had always been just Danielle. 6 months, I promised James. Just give me 6 months. She'll be engaged by then. She was. Marcus proposed on a yacht in front of 40 people. My mother called me sobbing with joy. Finally. Oh, thank God. Now we can start planning. I felt this weird mix of relief and resentment. Relief because now I could move forward with my life. Resentment because I put my entire future on hold for this moment, and nobody seemed to notice or care. The engagement party was at the Four Seasons. I'm not exaggerating. My parents rented out the terrace, hired a live band, flew in flowers from Ecuador. The invitation list had 200 names on it. Danielle wore a white dress, not a wedding dress, but close enough that 3 people asked if they'd missed the actual ceremony. I helped plan it. I stayed up until 2 in the morning assembling favor boxes, writing place cards in calligraphy because Danielle wanted that romantic, handwritten vibe. My mother kept saying, "Isn't this exciting? You'll have your turn soon." The engagement lasted 4 months. Marcus called it off via text. I'm not kidding. A text message that said, "I can't do this. I'm sorry." Danielle found out while we were at brunch. She read it, stood up from the table without a word, and walked out of the restaurant. My mother chased after her, leaving me with a bill and a half-eaten stack of pancakes. The pity was immediate and suffocating. Everyone treated Danielle like she'd survived a natural disaster. Casseroles appeared on my parents' doorstep. Her friends organized a healing retreat to Sedona. My aunt called her a warrior for getting out of bed every morning. I tried to be supportive. I really did. I sent care packages, called her every day, listened to her cry about how embarrassed she was, how everyone was talking about her, how she'd never find love again. I pushed my own wedding planning to the back burner because it felt cruel to be happy when she was suffering. Then, 3 months later, she got engaged again. His name was Brett. He was an investment banker with an identical twin brother and a summer house in the Hamptons. My mother was ecstatic. "This one is better," she whispered to me at the second engagement party, which was somehow even bigger than the first. Marcus was too soft. Brett has ambition. This party was at a vineyard. Ice sculptures. A pianist. Past hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I wore the dress my mother bought me, lavender, because Danielle said burgundy was too attention-seeking, and I smiled until my face hurt. The engagement lasted 7 months this time. Brett called it off 3 weeks before the wedding. Apparently, he'd been having doubts for a while, but didn't want to cause a scene. The deposits were non-refundable. The dress had been altered. The invitations had been mailed. This time, the pity came with an edge of judgment. People started asking questions in that concerned, gossipy way. Do you think maybe Danielle is doing something to push them away? Maybe she's not ready to settle down? Maybe she's too picky? My mother shut down every whisper with the ferocity of a mother bear. My daughter is perfect. These men are intimidated by successful women. Danielle moved back home. She quit her job in marketing because she needed time to heal. She slept until noon, watched reality TV until 3 in the morning, and had meals delivered to her room like she was recovering from surgery. My parents tiptoed around her, speaking in hushed voices, asking me to be gentle when I visited. I was 27 now. James and I had been engaged for almost 3 years. "We should just do it," he said one night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. "Go to the courthouse. Get married. Stop waiting for permission." I knew he was right. I knew we couldn't keep putting our lives on hold for a situation we couldn't control. But the thought of telling my parents made my stomach turn. The thought of Danielle's face, the fresh wave of pity and comparison, the inevitable meltdown. "Just a little longer," I said, hating myself for it. 2 months later, Danielle met Connor at a charity gala. He was a surgeon, soft-spoken, kind, with gentle eyes and a laugh that made everyone around him smile. Within a week, she was bringing him to family dinners. Within a month, my mother was showing him photo albums and talking about grandchildren. "I have a good feeling about this one," my mother told me, squeezing my hand across the table while Connor and Danielle whispered to each other on the couch. "Don't you?" I did, actually. Connor seemed different. More grounded. Less performative. He asked questions and listened to the answers. He helped clear the table after dinner without being asked. When Danielle got dramatic about something minor, a restaurant losing their reservation, a dress being out of stock, he'd gently redirect her instead of feeding into it. "Maybe third time's the charm," I said, and my mother beamed. They got engaged 6 months later. Small proposal, just the two of them at the botanical gardens. Danielle called me crying happy tears, which felt like a good sign. "I want you to be my maid of honor," she said, and something in my chest loosened. Finally, I was being included, not as an afterthought or an assistant, but as her sister. "Of course," I said. "I'd be honored." The wedding planning started immediately. This time, my parents were more cautious with the budget, but they still spared no expense. Venue at a historic mansion. Designer dress. Destination bachelorette party in Cabo. Every decision was made with the same intensity as before, but now there was an undercurrent of desperation. This one had to work. This one had to be perfect. I threw myself into maid of honor duties. I planned the bridal shower, organized the bachelorette trip, addressed invitations, managed the gift registry, coordinated with vendors. When Danielle got overwhelmed, I stepped in. When she changed her mind for the 15th time about centerpieces, I smiled and said we'd figure it out. 3 months before the wedding, we went dress shopping for the bridesmaids. Danielle, me, her 3 closest friends, and my mother. The bridal salon was high-end, all champagne and white couches and mirrors that made everything look expensive. Danielle had already chosen the style she wanted, a deep emerald green, floor-length, with a sweetheart neckline. Classic, elegant. I actually liked it. We all tried on our dresses together, stepping out of the fitting rooms to model for the group. Danielle's friends looked beautiful. I looked good. I hate saying that because it sounds conceited, but I did. The color brought out my eyes, the cut fit my body perfectly, and for the first time in years, I felt pretty. Not just acceptable, but actually pretty. I walked out smiling, excited to show everyone. The room went quiet. My mother's face did this complicated thing where she looked pleased and worried at the same time. Danielle's friends exchanged glances. And Danielle stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she turned to the consultant and said, "Do you have this style in a different color? Maybe a darker green? Or navy?" "I'm sorry?" the consultant asked. "The dress," Danielle said, gesturing at me without looking at me. "It's too bright. Too eye-catching. I need something that will blend better in photos." I felt my face get hot. "What?" "It's not about you," Danielle said quickly, her voice taking on that patient, slightly condescending tone. "It's about the overall aesthetic. You understand?" I didn't understand. The dress was the exact color and style she'd chosen. Nothing had changed except that I was wearing it. "Danielle," my mother started, but Danielle cut her off. "Mom, please. This is my wedding. I just want everything to be perfect." One of her friends chimed in, trying to be helpful. "Maybe we could all try a different style? Something that's a little less fitted?" The consultant looked uncomfortable. I looked at myself in the mirror, at this dress that had made me feel beautiful 30 seconds ago, and felt something inside me curdle. "Sure," I said. "Different color. No problem." We tried on navy. Danielle said it was too dark. We tried on a muted sage green. She said it clashed with the floral arrangements. We tried on burgundy. She said it was trying too hard. After the 5th dress, I was standing in the fitting room in my underwear, staring at myself in the mirror, and I realized, this wasn't about the dress. I got dressed in my regular clothes and walked back out. Everyone looked up expectantly. "You know what?" I said, keeping my voice light. "Why don't I just sit this one out? You have 3 other bridesmaids. That's plenty for photos." "Don't be ridiculous," my mother said. "You're her sister." "And I'll be there as her sister," I said. "In the audience. Supporting her. But maybe the bridal party works better without me." I was giving her an out. A way to get what she clearly wanted without having to say it out loud. Danielle looked at me, and for just a second, I saw relief flash across her face. Then she rearranged it into concern. Are you sure? I don't want you to feel excluded. I'm sure. Well, if you think that's best, she said, already turning back to the consultant. Can we see that original emerald dress in a size 4? My mother drove me home in silence. I could feel her disapproval radiating off her in waves, but I was too tired to care. Too tired to explain that I couldn't stand there for another 2 hours being made to feel like my existence was a problem to be solved. She's stressed, my mother finally said as we pulled up to my apartment. Wedding planning is overwhelming. Don't take it personally. I'm not, I lied. James took one look at my face when I walked in and pulled me into a hug. I told him everything. He got that look he always gets when my family does something that hurts me, this mix of anger and helplessness because there's nothing he can actually do. We're getting married, he said. This month. I don't care about a party or a dress or any of it. Let's just go to the courthouse and do it. And you know what? It felt like relief. Like someone had finally given me permission to stop waiting. We got married on a Thursday afternoon in November. Courthouse ceremony, just us and 2 witnesses we grabbed from the coffee shop next door. I wore a cream-colored dress I found at a department store. James wore the suit he'd worn to his brother's wedding. The whole thing took 15 minutes. It was perfect. I didn't tell my parents until the next day. I called my mother and said, James and I got married yesterday. We just wanted something simple. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. You what? She finally said. We got married. At the courthouse. It was lovely. Without telling anyone? Without your family? We wanted something just for us. I heard her breathing, sharp and shallow. Then my father's voice in the background, what? What's happening? My mother's voice got muffled, like she'd covered the receiver. I heard fragments, got married. Didn't invite us. Courthouse. Then my father was on the phone. Is this because of the bridesmaid dress? Your mother told me what happened, and honestly, you're being very immature about this whole. It's not about the dress, I said, and I was surprised by how calm I sounded. It's about the fact that I've been engaged for 3 years and I'm tired of waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. James and I love each other. We wanted to be married. So we got married. Danielle's wedding is in 3 months, my father said. You couldn't wait 3 more months? And there it was. The real issue. Not that I'd gotten married without them, but that I'd done it on my own timeline instead of Danielle's. No, I said. I couldn't. They didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. Danielle called me once, the day after she found out. Her voice was cold in a way I'd never heard before. I can't believe you'd do this to me, she said. Right before my wedding. Now everyone's going to be talking about you instead of me. Danielle, I got married at a courthouse with no guests. There's nothing to talk about. You're so selfish, she said, and hung up. The silence from my family was almost peaceful at first. No calls asking me to run errands for the wedding. No texts about seating charts or flower arrangements. No pressure to perform gratitude for being included in events that made me feel small. But then the guilt started seeping in. My mother's voice in my head, family is forever. Don't burn bridges over pride. I sent Danielle a gift from her registry. Expensive mixing bowls she'd registered for, the kind that cost more than my wedding dress. I included a card, wishing you all the happiness in the world. Love, your sister. She didn't respond. The wedding was beautiful. I know because I saw the photos on social media like everyone else. My parents posted dozens of them. Danielle in her dress, a cascade of white lace and tulle. Connor looking at her like she'd hung the moon. The mansion lit up at sunset. The bridesmaids in their emerald dresses, all coordinated and perfect. There wasn't a single family photo that included my parents without Danielle. I noticed. I'm sure I wasn't supposed to, but I did. The wedding cost $200,000. My mother mentioned it during one of the family dinners I started attending again 2 months later, after enough time had passed that showing up didn't feel like surrender. Worth every penny, she said, showing me photos on her phone for the 3rd time. Danielle deserved a perfect day after everything she's been through. I nodded and ate my rice. James and I had a good life. A great life, actually. We bought a house in a neighborhood we loved, with a big backyard and windows that let in morning light. He got a promotion. I started a new job that didn't make me want to cry every Monday morning. We adopted a dog, a golden retriever named Biscuit who had more energy than both of us combined. Danielle and Connor seemed happy too, from what I could see. They bought a condo downtown. Posted photos of dinner parties and weekend trips. On the surface, everything looked exactly like what my parents had dreamed of. Then, 2 years later, my mother called me sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "He cheated," she managed to gasp out. "Connor cheated on her. With a nurse from the hospital. She found text messages. She's filing for divorce." My first thought, and I'm not proud of this, was 3 for 3. My second thought was genuine sympathy. Because whatever Danielle had put me through, I wouldn't wish a cheating spouse on anyone. "I'm sorry," I said. "Is she okay?" "She's devastated," my mother said. "Absolutely destroyed. She can't stay in that condo. She can't look at anything that reminds her of him. She needs somewhere to go while the divorce is finalized." I had a bad feeling about where this was going. "Your house is bigger," my mother continued. "You have that extra bedroom. She could stay with you. Just for a few months, until she figures things out." There it was. "Mom, I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" "She's your sister. She needs family right now." "We're not that close," I said carefully. "And having her here when she's going through something this painful, I don't think I'm the right person to help her through it." "What are you talking about?" "You're her sister. Who else would she stay with?" "You," I said. "She could stay with you and Dad. She's lived there before. Our house is too small now. We converted her old room into an office. And your father's blood pressure has been terrible. We can't have that kind of stress right now." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "But I can? You're younger. You're stronger. And you have the space. Please, sweetheart. She's losing everything. Her marriage, her home, her future. She needs her family." I thought about the bridesmaid dress. The 3 years of waiting. The wedding I had without them because they'd made me feel like my happiness was an inconvenience to Danielle's timeline. "I need to talk to James," I said. "Of course. But please, make the right decision. She's family." I hung up and sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at nothing. Biscuit put his head on my knee, sensing something was wrong. I scratched his ears and tried to organize my thoughts into something coherent. James got home an hour later. I told him everything. "No," he said immediately. "Absolutely not. She's my sister. She's the sister who uninvited you from her bridal party because you'd look better in photos. Who didn't speak to you for months because you got married on your own timeline instead of waiting for her permission. Who has never, not once, treated you like anything other than an accessory to her life. She's going through a divorce." "And that's awful," James said. "It really is. But you can be sympathetic from a distance. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep her warm." I knew he was right. I knew it in every cell of my body. But I also knew what saying no would mean. The phone calls from my mother. The accusations of being cruel, selfish, petty. The way my father would sigh in disappointment. The family dinners where everyone would talk about how Danielle was going through such a hard time and I'd be the villain who turned her away when she needed help most. "I'll tell them no," I said finally. "But I need to do it in a way that makes them understand." "They're never going to understand," James said gently. "Not really. Because in their minds, Danielle will always be the priority, and you'll always be the one who's supposed to accommodate her." He was right about that too. I didn't call my parents back that night. Or the next day. I needed time to figure out what to say, how to explain without sounding heartless. But they didn't wait for me to call them. 3 days later, my father called. I knew from the tone of his voice in the first 2 words that this wasn't going to be a gentle conversation. "Your mother is beside herself," he said. "Danielle needs somewhere to stay, and you're dragging your feet. What's the problem?" "I don't think it's a good idea for her to stay here," I said. "Why not?" "Because we're not close, Dad. And having her in my home when she's going through something this traumatic. I don't think I'm equipped to support her the way she needs. You're her sister." "I know. And I love her. But our relationship is complicated, complicated," he repeated, and I could hear the anger building. "Your sister's marriage just fell apart, and you think this is the time to bring up old grudges?" "I'm not bringing up grudges. I'm trying to be realistic about what I can offer. You can offer her a room. That's all we're asking. A room in your house while she gets back on her feet. James and I need to discuss it more." "There's nothing to discuss," my father cut in. "She's family. You help family. Or are you so wrapped up in your own little perfect life that you've forgotten what that means?" The words hit like a slap. That's not fair. What's not fair is watching your sister suffer while you come up with excuses. I closed my eyes and tried to steady my breathing. I need time to think. How much time? She's sleeping on our couch right now because she can't stand to be in that condo. Every day that passes is another day she's reminded that her husband destroyed their marriage. How much thinking do you need to do? I'll call you back, I said, and hung up before he could respond. James found me in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed with my phone in my hands. They're not going to let this go, I said. I know. And if I say no, I'll be the bad guy forever. Probably. I looked at him. What would you do? He sat down next to me and took my hand. I'd say no. Because you don't owe Danielle a room in your house any more than she owed you a spot in her wedding party. Because family isn't a magic word that erases years of being treated like you don't matter. Because you deserve to protect your peace, and having her here wouldn't give you that. But I'm not you. And I know how hard it is to disappoint your parents. So if you want to say yes, if you really think it's the right thing to do, I'll support you. I won't like it, but I'll support you. I loved him so much in that moment it hurt. I'm going to say no, I said. But I need to explain why in a way that they might actually hear. Good luck with that, he said, kissing my forehead. I called my mother the next morning. She answered on the first ring. Have you made a decision? She asked before I could even say hello. I have. And I need you to really listen to what I'm about to say, okay? Okay. Her voice was cautious. Danielle can't stay here. Not because I don't care about her, and not because I'm holding on to grudges. But because our relationship isn't strong enough to survive her living here during the worst time of her life. That's ridiculous. You're sisters. Of course your relationship is strong enough. Mom, when's the last time Danielle called me just to talk? When's the last time she asked about my life, or my job, or anything that wasn't directly related to her? Silence. When's the last time she apologized for anything? For the bridesmaid situation, or for not speaking to me for months after I got married, or for any of the 100 little ways she's made it clear that my feelings don't matter as much as hers? She's been through a lot, my mother said quietly. The broken engagements, the pressure, I know. And I have sympathy for that. I really do. But I can't set my entire life aside to fix hers. I can't invite her into my home, knowing that every time I'm at work or out with friends or just trying to live my life, she'll see it as an abandonment. I can't be her emotional support system when we don't have that kind of relationship. You could build that relationship. This could be an opportunity to get closer. I almost laughed. Mom, do you honestly believe that? Do you really think Danielle staying here would bring us closer together, or would it just be me walking on eggshells in my own home, trying not to upset her while she processes her divorce? Another silence, longer this time. She needs help, my mother finally said, and her voice cracked. I know. And I'm not saying she shouldn't get help. I'm saying I'm not the right person to give it to her. She should stay with you and Dad, or with one of her friends, or she should get her own place. But she can't stay here. Your father is going to be very disappointed. I know. Danielle is going to be hurt. I know. You're choosing to abandon your sister when she needs you most. And there it was. The final card. The one I'd been waiting for. No, I said, and my voice was steadier than I expected. I'm choosing to protect my marriage and my mental health. Those are allowed to be priorities too. I have to go, my mother said abruptly. I need to tell your father and sister that they'll have to make other arrangements. She hung up before I could respond. James hugged me when I told him. You did the right thing. Then why do I feel so awful? Because you're a good person. Good people feel bad when they disappoint people they love, even when they're making the right choice. For 3 days, I didn't hear from anyone in my family. No calls, no texts, no passive-aggressive social media posts. Just silence. I told myself it was fine. They needed time to adjust. They'd come around eventually. Then my father called. Danielle found an apartment, he said without preamble. She's moving in next week. Your mother and I are covering her rent for the first 3 months until she gets back on her feet financially. That's great, I said, and meant it. I'm glad she found something. She wanted me to call you. To tell you that you were right. I blinked. What? About not staying with you. She said she doesn't want to be around someone who would bring up the bridesmaid situation when she's going through a divorce. She said it proved that you're petty and that you've been holding on to resentment for years. My throat tightened. I didn't bring up the bridesmaid situation to hurt her. I brought it up to explain why our relationship isn't strong enough for her to live here. Well, that's how she took it. And honestly, I can't say I blame her. That was years ago. She was stressed. She apologized. She never apologized. She explained, he corrected. She told you why she made that decision. And you should have let it go. I felt something inside me crack. All those years of swallowing my feelings, of being understanding, of waiting my turn, of making myself smaller so Danielle could shine brighter. And now, even in this, even when I tried to set a boundary for my own well-being, I was the villain. You're right, I said, and my voice sounded strange even to my own ears. I should have let it go. Just like I let go of postponing my engagement twice so she could have her moment. Just like I let go of planning 3 engagement parties that fell through. Just like I let go of being uninvited from her bridal party. Just like I let go of getting married without my parents because they'd spent $200,000 on Danielle's wedding and told me I'd have to pay for my own. That's not. Just like I let go of not being in any of the family photos from her wedding. Just like I let go of the fact that you and Mom have made it abundantly clear for my entire life that Danielle's happiness is more important than mine. Just like I've let go of every single thing that might make me seem petty or resentful or less than the perfect, understanding, accommodating younger sister you needed me to be. I was crying now, hot angry tears that I couldn't stop. You want to know why I can't let her stay here? Because I'm tired. I'm tired of being the afterthought. I'm tired of my feelings not mattering. I'm tired of being told I'm selfish for wanting the same things Danielle gets handed to her without question. I'm tired of watching you and Mom bend over backward to protect her from any discomfort while expecting me to just absorb everything and smile about it. You're being dramatic, my father said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. No, I'm being honest. Maybe for the first time in my entire life, I'm actually being honest with you about how all of this has felt. And you know what the worst part is? You're not even going to hear me. You're going to hang up this phone, tell Mom and Danielle that I had a meltdown, and use it as more evidence that I'm the problem. If you're this unhappy with your family, maybe you should. Maybe I should what? I interrupted. Cut you off? Stop coming to family dinners? That's what you want, right? To be able to tell people that I'm the cold, distant daughter who abandoned her family? Because that's easier than admitting that you spent 28 years playing favorites. We never played favorites. And that's when I said it. The thing I'd been holding in for years. The thing that had been building in my chest like a scream. Yes, you did. You always have. And the saddest part is that Danielle doesn't even appreciate it. She takes and takes and takes, and when life doesn't go exactly the way she wants, she falls apart, and you rush in to fix it. And I can't be part of that anymore. I can't keep sacrificing my peace so she doesn't have to experience any discomfort. The silence on the other end was different this time. Heavier. So that's it? My father said finally. You're done with us? I'm done letting you make me feel guilty for having boundaries. I love you, Dad. I love Mom and Danielle too. But I also love myself, and I'm not going to keep apologizing for that. I heard my mother's voice in the background, sharp and questioning. Then the phone was being passed. What did you say to your father? My mother demanded. And I realized, with a strange sense of calm, that I was done explaining myself. Done justifying my feelings. Done hoping that if I just found the right words, they'd finally understand. I told him the truth, I said. About all of it. And now I'm going to hang up, and I'm going to have dinner with my husband, and I'm going to live my life. And you can decide what kind of relationship you want with me going forward, but it's not going to be one where I'm expected to set myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. You're being cruel, my mother said, her voice breaking. No, I said gently. I'm being honest. And if honesty feels cruel to you, that should tell you something. I hung up. James was standing in the doorway, biscuit at his side. You okay? I nodded, wiping my face. Yeah. I am. And the strange thing was, I meant it. The fallout was predictable. My mother called twice more that week, but I let the calls go to voicemail. She left messages that started with anger and slowly softened into guilt. I can't believe you'd speak to your father that way. You know he has a heart condition. We've sacrificed so much for you girls. Fine, we'll give you space since that's clearly what you want. Danielle texted me once, Mom told me what you said to them. I hope you're happy. I almost responded. Almost explained, again, that this wasn't about making anyone unhappy. That I was just trying to protect the life James and I had built. That I still loved her, still cared about her, still hoped she'd heal from what Connor had done. But I didn't. Because nothing I said would change how she saw the situation. In her version of events, I was the villain. And maybe that was okay. Maybe I didn't need to be the hero in everyone else's story. 3 weeks later, I got a call from my aunt, my father's sister, who I'd always been close to. "I heard what happened," she said. "Your mother called me." I braced myself for another lecture. "Good for you," she said instead. I almost dropped the phone. "What?" "Good. For you," she repeated. "I've watched your parents do this for years. The way they treat you and Danielle differently. I've said something before, but they don't listen. They think because they love you both, it's equal. But love isn't the same as equity." Something in my chest loosened. "You noticed?" "Everyone notices. Your uncle and I talk about it all the time. The way they throw money at Danielle's problems but expect you to figure things out on your own. The way they make excuses for her behavior but hold you to impossible standards. It's exhausting just watching it, so I can't imagine living it." I started crying again, but this time it felt different. Lighter. Like someone had finally seen me. "Your mother is stubborn," my aunt continued. "And your father follows her lead when it comes to family dynamics. But they love you. They're stuck in a pattern they don't know how to break. And honestly, this might be the wake-up call they need. Or it might be the thing that breaks us completely," I said. "Maybe. But you can't live your life trying to manage everyone else's emotions. That's not your job." After we hung up, I told James what she'd said. "See?" he said. "You're not crazy. Other people see it too. But they're still my parents. I still want them in my life. Then they'll figure out how to be in your life on terms that don't require you to sacrifice your well-being. And if they can't, then you have your answer about what matters more to them." It was harsh but true. A month passed. Then 2. I threw myself into work, into home improvement projects, into training Biscuit to stop eating the couch cushions. James and I took a weekend trip to the mountains. We had friends over for dinner. We lived our life. And slowly, the guilt started to fade. I wasn't waiting for permission anymore. Wasn't holding my breath for someone else's crisis to resolve before I could be happy. Wasn't monitoring my joy to make sure it didn't overshadow someone else's pain. It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for 28 years. Then, 3 months after the phone call, my mother showed up at my door. I was in the middle of making lunch when the doorbell rang. Biscuit lost his mind barking. I opened the door and there she was, holding a container of homemade baklava. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi." We stood there for a long moment, neither of us sure what to do next. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside and let her through. She looked smaller somehow, older. There were new lines around her eyes that I hadn't noticed before. She set the baklava on the kitchen counter and turned to face me. "I've been thinking about what you said. About all of it." I waited. "And you were right. About some things. Maybe a lot of things." My heart started beating faster. "Your father and we didn't mean to make you feel less important than Danielle. We just..." She needed more help. She's always been more sensitive, more fragile. You were always so capable, so strong. We thought you didn't need us as much. So you decided I didn't need you at all? She flinched. "That's not what I meant." "But that's what happened, Mom. You and Dad spent $200,000 on Danielle's wedding. You told me I'd have to pay for mine. You didn't even come to my courthouse ceremony. Because you didn't invite us. Because you made it clear that my marriage was less important than Danielle's timeline. I postponed my engagement twice, Mom. Twice. I put my entire life on hold because you said it would embarrass the family if I got married before her." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "That was a mistake. I see that now. I was so worried about Danielle, about her finding someone, about her being happy. And you were already happy. You had James. You had your career. You seemed fine." "I was fine," I said. "But I also deserved to have my parents at my wedding. I deserved to have them excited for me, not just relieved that I wasn't causing problems for Danielle." She sank into one of my kitchen chairs, looking defeated. "I don't know how to fix this." I sat down across from her. "You can't fix it. Not all of it. Because some of it is just years of hurt that I have to work through. But you can stop making me feel guilty for having boundaries. You can stop expecting me to sacrifice my peace for Danielle's comfort. She's your sister. I know. And I love her. But I can't keep being her emotional support animal while she processes her life. That's not fair to me, and honestly, it's not fair to her either. She needs to learn how to stand on her own. My mother was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally looked up, her expression was raw in a way I'd rarely seen. Your father and I always thought we were doing the right thing. Danielle was harder. She needed more attention, more reassurance. You were easy. You never complained, never asked for much. We thought that meant you were okay. I was okay, I said carefully. But okay isn't the same as valued. I needed to feel like I mattered too. Like my happiness was just as important as hers. It was. It is. Then act like it. Stop making excuses for the way she treats people. Stop expecting me to be endlessly understanding while giving her permission to be endlessly selfish. She nodded slowly. I'll try. I can't promise I'll get it right every time, but I'll try. It wasn't everything I wanted to hear. It wasn't a complete acknowledgement of every hurt, every overlooked moment, every time I'd been made to feel like the supporting character in Danielle's story. But it was a start. What about Danielle? I asked. How is she? She's okay. The divorce is almost final. She's in therapy, which is helping. She got a new job, something in public relations. She seems more stable. That's good. I'm glad. She's still angry with you, my mother said carefully. I figured. She says she doesn't understand why you brought up the bridesmaid thing. She thinks you were trying to hurt her when she was already down. I took a deep breath. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was trying to explain why I couldn't have her live here. Because our relationship isn't strong enough for that kind of proximity, and the bridesmaid situation was an example of why. She doesn't see it that way. I know. And maybe someday she will, or maybe she won't. But I can't control how she interprets my boundaries. My mother looked at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time. When did you get so strong? I was always strong, Mom. You just never needed me to be strong for myself. You only needed me to be strong for everyone else. She stayed for another hour. We ate baklava and talked about safer things, her garden, James's promotion, Biscuit's ongoing war with the mailman. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like a door opening. A small one, but a door nonetheless. When she left, she hugged me tight. I love you, she said. I need to do better at showing you that. I love you too. After she left, I called James at work. My mom came by. And I think maybe we're going to be okay. Eventually. Good, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. You deserve that. That night, lying in bed next to James with Biscuit sprawled across our feet, I thought about everything that had happened. The years of feeling invisible. The resentment that had built up like sediment. The final confrontation that had felt like breaking and healing at the same time. I thought about Danielle, alone in her new apartment, processing a divorce and probably replaying every conversation we'd had, rewriting me as the villain in her version of events. Part of me felt sad about that. We'd never been close in the way sisters in movies are close, but we'd had moments. Shared jokes. Inside references. The occasional flash of real connection. But mostly, I felt relieved. Relieved that I'd finally said what I needed to say. Relieved that I'd protected my peace even when it was hard. Relieved that I'd stopped waiting for permission to live my life. You awake? James whispered. Yeah. Thinking about your family? How do you know? You get this look. Like you're solving a puzzle in your head. I turned to face him. Do you think I did the right thing? I think you did the only thing you could do and still respect yourself. That's always the right thing. Even if it costs me my relationship with Danielle? You didn't have much of a relationship with Danielle to lose, he said gently. You had an obligation. A script you were supposed to follow. But a real relationship? That requires both people to show up. He was right. He was always right about these things. I'm proud of you, he said. In case I haven't said that enough. You've said it. Well, I'm saying it again. You stood up for yourself. You set boundaries. You refused to be small so someone else could feel big. That takes guts. I kissed him, grateful for the 1,000th time that I'd found someone who saw me. Really saw me. Not the version of me my family needed, but the actual person I was. 6 months later, things had settled into a new normal. My parents and I talked regularly, though the conversations were more careful than they used to be. More honest too. My mother was making an effort to ask about my life, to remember details, to show interest beyond surface politeness. My father was slower to come around, but he was trying. He called on my birthday and talked to me for an hour about nothing in particular. It felt like a peace offering, and I took it. Danielle and I didn't speak. I'd see updates on social media, photos of her at brunch with friends, professional headshots from her new job, carefully curated images of a life being rebuilt. She looked happy, or at least she looked like she was trying to be. I hoped she was. Despite everything, I really did hope she was okay. My aunt texted me occasionally with updates I wasn't getting anywhere else. Danielle was dating someone new, a teacher she'd met through friends. She'd started running marathons. She'd been promoted at work. She seems good, my aunt wrote. Different. More grounded, maybe. I'm glad, I wrote back, and meant it. Then, almost a year to the day after the phone call that had changed everything, I got a text from Danielle. Can we talk? I stared at it for a full minute before responding. Sure. When? Coffee this week? Thursday? We met at a cafe halfway between our houses, neutral territory. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of her. I got you a latte, she said. I remembered you liked them. It was such a small thing, but it surprised me. Danielle remembering something I liked without being reminded. Thanks. We sat in awkward silence for a moment, both of us stirring our drinks without drinking them. I've been in therapy, Danielle said finally. For almost a year now. Working through the divorce, and the engagements before that, and just everything. That's great. I'm glad you're getting help. My therapist asked me to make a list of people I'd hurt or pushed away. To think about my part in the relationships that fell apart. She looked up at me. You were at the top of the list. I didn't know what to say. I was awful to you, she continued. For years. I was so wrapped up in my own drama, my own needs, that I didn't see how I was treating you. Or I saw it and didn't care because I was too busy being the center of attention. Danielle, no, let me finish. Please. She took a shaky breath. The bridesmaid thing. That was cruel. I uninvited you because you looked beautiful in that dress, and I couldn't handle the idea of anyone looking at anyone but me on my wedding day. I told myself it was about the photos, about the aesthetic, but it wasn't. It was about my own insecurity. I felt my eyes sting. Okay. And when you got married, I was furious. Not because you didn't wait for me, but because you didn't need me. You didn't need mom and dad's approval, or my permission, or any of the validation I'd always needed. You just did what made you happy. And it made me realize how much of my life I'd spent performing for other people instead of actually living it. I never meant to make you feel bad, I said quietly. I know. That's what made it worse. You weren't trying to show me up or hurt me. You were just being yourself, living your life, and somehow that was threatening to me. She wiped her eyes. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't know if I deserve that. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see how selfish I was. How much I took from you without ever giving anything back. I didn't trust myself to speak, so I just nodded. I heard about what happened, she continued. When mom and dad asked you to let me stay with you. When you said no. Danielle, I can explain. You don't need to explain. You were right. We didn't have the kind of relationship where that would work. And honestly, if our positions were reversed, I don't think I would have said yes either. We sat there, 2 sisters who'd spent decades orbiting each other without ever really connecting, and I felt something shift. I'm sorry too, I said. For resenting you for so long. For keeping score. For not trying harder to build a real relationship with you. You tried, Danielle said. I was just too caught up in myself to notice. So where do we go from here? I asked. I don't know. Start over, maybe? Get to know each other as actual people instead of just the roles we've been playing? I'd like that. We finished our coffee and made plans to meet again the following week. It was tentative, careful, the way you'd handle something fragile. But it was real. As I drove home, I thought about how weird it was that everything had to fall apart before it could come back together in a better shape. How I'd had to risk losing my family in order to find my place in it. How sometimes the people who love you need to see you willing to walk away before they understand they've been taking you for granted. When I got home, James was in the backyard playing with Biscuit. I stood at the window watching them, this life I'd built brick by brick, choice by choice, boundary by boundary. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, Danielle told me you two met for coffee. Thank you for giving her a chance. I smiled and typed back, we're giving each other a chance. And that felt like the truth of it. Not me sacrificing again. Not me being the bigger person while everyone else stayed the same. Just two people, damaged and imperfect and trying, meeting each other halfway. Later that night, curled up on the couch with James and Biscuit, I thought about the question that had haunted me through all of this: did I do the right thing? And I realized I'd been asking the wrong question. It wasn't about right or wrong. It was about honoring myself enough to stop accepting less than I deserved. It was about understanding that you can love your family and still protect yourself from them. That saying no isn't the same as being cruel. That boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to healthier relationships. You're doing it again, James said, running his fingers through my hair. Doing what? That look. The puzzle-solving look. Just thinking about how strange life is. How you can spend years feeling one way, and then everything changes, and suddenly you're feeling something completely different. Good different or bad different? Good, I said. Definitely good. 6 months after that coffee with Danielle, we built something that felt like a real sisterhood. We texted regularly. Met for lunch every few weeks. She'd started asking about my life, really asking, with follow-up questions and genuine interest. When James got promoted again, she sent flowers to my office with a card that said, "So proud of you both." We weren't best friends. We probably never would be. Too much history, too many patterns that were easier to slip back into than to break. But we were sisters in a way we'd never been before. Real sisters, not just people who shared DNA and childhood trauma. My parents had changed too, in small ways that added up to something significant. They split their attention more evenly now. Asked about my job with the same enthusiasm they asked about Danielle's. Remembered anniversaries and milestones without being reminded. Last month, my mother called to tell me they were planning a small party for my birthday. "Nothing big," she said. "Just family. We want to celebrate you." It was such a simple thing. Such a normal thing that parents do for their children. But for me, it felt revolutionary. The party was lovely. My parents' backyard, string lights, my favorite foods. Danielle gave a toast that made me cry, to my sister, who taught me that being strong doesn't mean absorbing everyone else's pain. Who showed me what healthy boundaries look like, even when it was hard. Who loved me enough to say no when I needed to hear it. James squeezed my hand under the table. My father stood up next. "I haven't always been the father you deserved," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I let things slide that shouldn't have slid. Made excuses when I should have spoken up. Treated you like you were fine when I should have checked if you were okay." He paused, looking directly at me. "I'm sorry. And I'm grateful you gave us the chance to do better." My mother just hugged me, long and tight, and whispered, "I'm so proud of who you are." Now, looking back on everything, the postponed engagements, the wedding I wasn't in, the courthouse ceremony without my family, the phone call that broke everything open, I can see it all differently. It wasn't about the money they spent on Danielle's wedding versus mine. It wasn't about the bridesmaid dress or the family photos or any single incident. It was about a lifetime of feeling invisible, and the moment I finally made myself seen. It was about learning that you can't control how people react to your boundaries, but you can control whether you enforce them. That being loved isn't the same as being valued, and you deserve both. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to participate in patterns that hurt you. People ask me sometimes if I regret how I handled it. If I wish I'd been gentler, more diplomatic, less confrontational. And honestly? No. Because gentle wasn't working. Diplomatic wasn't working. I'd spent 28 years being gentle and diplomatic and understanding, and all it got me was resentment and heartache in a family that didn't see me. That phone call, as painful as it was, as much as it cost me in the moment, was the best thing I ever did for myself. And in the end, it was the best thing I did for my family too. Because now we're all honest. Now we're all trying. Now when I say, "That hurt me," people listen instead of making excuses. Now when boundaries are set, they're respected instead of trampled. Now I'm not the spare daughter anymore. I'm just me. And for the first time in my life, that's enough. James and I are talking about starting a family soon. When I told my mother, she cried happy tears and started talking about baby blankets she wants to knit. When I told Danielle, she got excited about being an aunt and started sending me lists of baby books she'd heard were good. Nobody asked me to wait. Nobody suggested I should consider how my pregnancy might affect anyone else. Nobody made me feel like my joy was an inconvenience. And that, More than anything else, tells me how far we've all come. Last week, I was cleaning out old boxes in the garage and found my wedding dress. The simple cream one I'd bought at the department store for my courthouse wedding. I held it up, remembering that day. How scared I was to tell my parents. How relieved I felt when it was done. How right it felt to choose myself. James found me standing there, the dress in my hands, smiling. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Just remembering who I was then. Who I am now. And I like her. Both versions. The one who waited too long because she loved her family. And the one who finally said enough. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. I've always liked her. I hung the dress back up carefully. Someday, maybe I'd pass it down. Maybe I'd tell my daughter about the wedding that almost wasn't. About the family that had to break before it could heal. About the power of knowing your worth and refusing to accept less. Or maybe I'd just tell her the simple version: sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. And sometimes choosing yourself is the only way to save everyone else. Either way, she'd know. She'd grow up seeing her mother respected, valued, heard. She'd grow up in a family where boundaries weren't betrayals and honesty wasn't cruelty. She'd grow up knowing she was enough, exactly as she was. And honestly, that's worth everything I went through to get here.